Chapter 36. Silver Xian Qi begins, and gold Xian Qi begins. It means that when Xian Qi breaks through the 9th level and reaches the silver level, it is the true beginning of the road of the strong. On the Xian continent, the cultivation of Xian Qi can be said to be quite widespread. Even the ordinary soldiers in the military camps have Xian Qi cultivation. However, the vast majority of people stop at the 9th level, unable to advance any further in their lives. This is also the main reason why no one refuted Jun Xie's rebuke of the Jun family's guards. More than 80% of the 300 guards have reached the 8th level, and many of them are at the peak of the 8th level, but none of them can reach the higher realm of the 9th level. It's only one level of difference, but it's almost like the difference between heaven and earth. However, the gap between the 9th grade and the silver grade was like a huge watershed, completely separating the people on both sides with a distance as great as the heavens and the earth. All under the 9th level are ants. This sentence is enough to explain everything. And the real high-level cultivation of Xian Qi starts from the silver level. There is a huge difference. Apart from the silver Xian expert, the other 5 had also stopped in their tracks. 6 sharp gazes pierced through the curtain of rain. The bodies of the other 5 were covered in a thick black aura. These 5 people were actually at the peak of the 9th level. Although the leader is seriously injured, his whole body is still dazzling with silver light, obviously already at the peak of the silver level, about to enter the ranks of the gold level. It was also him who discovered Jun Xie. No wonder he was able to steal from the Tang family. He chose the time when the Tang family's strength was at its weakest, and suddenly sent in 20 experts. Moreover, he had planned well in advance, and even had an insider. If he couldn't come up with something, then the strength of the Tang family would be almost terrifying. But in fact, only 6 of the 20 people came out, and if the remaining 14 people were all 9th level, then the strength of the Tang family is still not to be underestimated. The heavy rain was still pouring down crazily. The dense raindrops and the rising mist made it difficult for people to see clearly. Moreover, it was an autumn dusk. Jun Xie was a little depressed. His current strength was still too weak. Although he had tried his best to hide his aura, he couldn't hide it flawlessly like in his previous life. It looked like there was bound to be a fierce battle today. However, with his current strength, would he be able to defeat these 6 experts? This was something that he had no confidence in at all. Even if he were to face one of them, with Jun Xie's current strength, he would not be able to match it. Unfortunately, he had already seen the other party's dirty deeds, and even if he wanted to get away, he couldn't. The other party would definitely kill him to silence him, so in order to preserve his life, he could only think of another way. He was the dignified king of assassins, but today, he had fallen into such a bad situation. What a great irony! As he was thinking gloomily, Jun Xie suddenly realized something, a very important thing. This made his extremely gloomy mood instantly turn into joy, and even inexplicably excited. He almost laughed out loud. Although he was facing 6 experts who were stronger than him, in his heart, at this moment, Jun Xie already had the confidence to win. Jun Xie's body was faintly discernible in the rain and mist. Although the 6 people on the opposite side felt that there were people in front of them, they weren't sure how many people there were, and they couldn't see Jun Xie's appearance clearly. Therefore, each of them was very careful and didn't dare to act rashly. After all, after the battle, their strength was greatly reduced, and many of them were seriously injured. A little carelessness could easily lead to a fatal disaster. However, for Jun Xie, the same situation was really no different from the daytime. In fact, it was even more obvious than in the daytime. Although the art of unlocking heaven's fortune was extremely mysterious, and had its own profound mysteries, but Jun Xie had after all only cultivated for slightly more than a month. His cultivation was still shallow, and naturally, it was difficult for him to understand its mysteries, and was far from reaching the stage of night vision. However, the 6 people on the opposite side seemed to be afraid that others wouldn't be able to see them, and each of them operated the Xian Qi in their bodies to the extreme. The silver light and black Qi were incomparably dazzling in the rain and mist. In Jun Xie's eyes, they were simply 6 excellent targets, and they were incomparably clear targets. It was like a big ship that had lost its course in the vast sea, and suddenly a lighthouse appeared in front of it. This was what Jun Xia was feeling right now. This kind of brightness, even a missile could hit it. Jun Xia truly discovered the biggest flaw of this world's Xian Qi. It was too dazzling, and there was no way to conceal one's tracks. If one wanted to fight, one must first gather the Xian Qi in one's body, but once one gathered Xian Qi, one's body would emit light. In particular, in front of a super assassin like Jun Xia, these 6 people were like 6 naked fat pigs, dignified and imposing, waiting to be slaughtered. No wonder when Jun Xia had cheated in the dice, no one had suspected anything. In this world, as long as one had cultivated Xian Qi and surpassed level 4 or 5, they could do it by remote control of the dice. But the problem was, doing so would inevitably cause their body to flash strangely. Unless it was Supreme Shen Xian, but would Supreme Shen Xian need to cheat in gambling? The person who created this Xian Qi cultivation method is simply a genius. How did he know that I would transmigrate here and encounter such a situation? This is simply an excellent cultivation method tailor-made for an assassin like me to kill people. If these 6 people were 6 pigs, then Xian Qi in the eyes of Jun Xia was now fodder. Only after eating a lot of fodder could pigs grow so fat. Moreover, they would take the initiative to run in front of the butcher, show off their fat, and proudly say, "Look, how fat I am. Let's start the slaughter. If you like it, then cut it from there." And the role that Jun Xia was playing at this moment was this butcher. Of course, to kill a pig, one must also have skills. Because these pigs in front of him did not seem to be easy to kill. If one was not careful, they might even nudge him. After all, the small body of the butcher was too weak and could not withstand a nudge. Under the movement of his muscles, the 18 gold coin darts that were originally hidden under his ribs quietly fell into the palm of Jun Xia's hand. Jun Xia's body was motionless, and his eyes flashed with a long-lost bloodthirsty color. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune was operating at full force, and from his meridians, all of it was injected into the gold coin darts. In this autumn afternoon of torrential rain, when the world was dusky, the king of assassins from another world revealed his fangs for the first time in this strange world. For the first time, he displayed his colorful and artistic killing techniques. Pang, pang, the sound of footsteps slowly sounded, and the 6 people slowly separated, stepping on the rainwater under their feet. They maintained the same distance between each other, and carefully outflanked Jun Xia. They could all feel that the person opposite them was still there, and had not left. This person must not be allowed to live, no matter who he was, he must be eradicated. The hearts of the 6 people were all thinking the same thing. In the misty rain, the person opposite them seemed to move a little, and then they saw 6 dazzling yellow lights rapidly piercing through the rain, as fast as lightning. Their target was the throats of the 6 people. Jun Xia's unique internal energy caused the gold coin darts to emit a dazzling light after being infused with his internal energy. The moment the yellow light flashed, the hearts of the 6 people simultaneously felt a chill. The 6 people simultaneously felt their bodies stiffen, and they were extremely shocked. One of them widened his eyes in horror, and with a voice that was on the verge of crying, he shouted half a sentence, "Earth Xian. What kind of person could emit such a dazzling yellow light? Such speed and strength?" Apart from Earth Xian experts, it was simply impossible for other ranks to emit such Xian Qi and such brilliance. Above the silver grade was the gold grade, above the gold grade was the jade grade, and above the jade grade was the earth grade. Such a gap was akin to the difference between heaven and earth. How were they supposed to fight this war? Silence them? They must have been silenced. Even if the opponent was just an ordinary gold-leveled expert, the 6 of them might not be able to match up to an Earth Xian expert even if they were in their peak condition. What's more, they had actually encountered an Earth Xian expert when all of them were heavily injured. A new week has begun, and the list of new books is filled with experts. Brothers and sisters of the evil monarch, let us fight. Throw the recommendation votes at me. Chapter 37. The heavens want me dead. The 6 of them had the urge to cry at the same time. Despair. They had only seen the 6 dazzling yellow lights and had neglected the fact that the person in front of them was unable to give them the pressure of an Earth Xian expert. However, the despair and fear that had spontaneously arisen in their hearts had caused the 6 of them to be absent-minded for a moment. And it was precisely this moment of absent-mindedness that had completely determined the fate of these 6 people. The reason why Jun Xia had used the dazzling light from the gold coin darts was precisely because he had calculated this point. An outstanding assassin was most adept at seeing through the opponent's state of mind. He had calculated that when these 6 people were faced with an unrivaled expert, they would inevitably be at a loss whether to advance or retreat. And what Jun Xia wanted was precisely this moment when they were at a loss. A few heavily injured silver-leveled Xian experts were suddenly faced with a peak Earth Xian expert. The fear and bewilderment in their hearts was enormous. It was almost as if they were waiting to be slaughtered. These people were currently being chased. Of course, this feeling of utter despair would be born even faster. What Jun Xia wanted was this little bit of time. If they had directly launched a surprise attack earlier, at least 3 of these 6 people would have been able to avoid Jun Xia's gold coin darts. Because the darts had been split into 6 parts, the accuracy would certainly not be as good as a single dart. And as long as only one of them was left alive, Jun Xia would be in big trouble. Although they were injured, any one of them was still not someone that the current Jun Xia could deal with. The reason why the little Li flying dagger had never missed its target was because there was only one at a time. Jun Xia's focus was naturally on that silver-leveled Xian expert. Although he was seriously injured, he was still the one who had given Jun Xia the most pressure. It was also him who had keenly discovered his tracks. After the 6 dazzling gold coin darts, another 12 black lights flew out. However, the first 6 darts had already attracted their full attention. Moreover, the overwhelming rain had blocked their line of sight. Each and every one of them was still in a state of shock. In fact, they had barely managed to dodge the darts at the very last moment. They didn't even dare to use their weapons to block the darts. They were afraid that the Earth Xian expert in front of them would injure their internal organs. In actual fact, if the one who shot the concealed weapons was really an Earth Xian expert, they wouldn't even have the chance to see the yellow light before they would have already lost their lives. Even the strongest among them, the silver-leveled Xian expert, wouldn't be an exception. Unfortunately, in their state of shock, they had completely overlooked this. Even though they dodged quickly, 2 of them still let out blood-curdling screams. They weren't able to dodge in time, and the trembling coin darts pierced into their collarbones. Blood spurted out, and they also fell down. Even those who had fallen thought that they were already dead. After being struck by an Earth Xian expert's thunderous blow, what else could they do but close their eyes and wait for death? Moreover, the darts had pierced into their throats, but they didn't notice that the darts had actually only pierced into their collarbones, and didn't sever their trachea. 4 muffled screams sounded almost at the same time. Following that, the 12 flying daggers either pierced their throats or their foreheads. Each of the 4 people who were standing had at least 2 daggers on their bodies, and all of them had been injured in vital areas. Their eyes were filled with disbelief as they tightly clutched the hilt of the daggers in their throats and fell straight into the rain. The silver-leveled expert who had been taken care of by Jun Xia was injured and couldn't dodge easily. His situation was even more miserable. His head and body had been pierced by 4 flying daggers. They had pierced so deeply into their bodies that even the hilt could not be seen. Even in death, they couldn't understand why they were still hit by the flying daggers when they had clearly dodged the most terrifying fatal blow. When an Earth Xian expert faced an ant-like existence like them, he should have respected his status and not made a move. Why did he make another move? Why? Against an opponent who was 2 levels lower than him, he actually launched a sneak attack. Moreover, the first time didn't count as a second. Could it be that the Earth Xian experts these days were all so shameless? The Earth Xian experts of this world were all people who respected their status. When did they become so shameless? The Earth Xian expert Jun Xia didn't hesitate at all. With lightning speed, he pulled out the flying dagger from the forehead of one of the corpses. His footsteps didn't stop as he took 2 steps at a time. He flew to the side of the 2 people who had fallen earlier. With a twist of his wrist, he lifted the dagger and ruthlessly pierced it into their hearts. Although these two people had also suffered some injuries, it wasn't enough to instantly kill them. Although they were currently in a state of shock and absent-mindedness, they still had a certain amount of combat power left. An enemy with combat power must not be let off, even if he was already on the verge of death. The last moment of his previous life was the best lesson for Jun Xia. The enemy that posed no threat to him was only the dead. The murderous intent in Jun Xia's heart surged crazily. His face was grim. The flying dagger in Jun Xia's hand had yet to be inserted. The tip of his foot was already pointing outwards. At the same time that the dagger was inserted, his feet had already begun to move. After the dagger was inserted, he immediately let go and turned towards another person. Twisting his waist, he quickly pounced down. Using his hand as a knife, he slashed at the throat of another person. This series of movements was like a hare descending from a falcon. It was too much for the eyes to take in. Jun Xia's fleeting figure followed almost immediately after the yellow coin dart had left his hand. At the same time, four blood-curdling screams were heard. Jun Xia had already pulled out the flying dagger from the head of one of the people. The four corpses had yet to make a sound as they fell to the ground. The flying dagger had already been inserted into the heart of the survivor. His other hand had already chopped at the throat of the last survivor. The person who had been stabbed in the heart didn't even have the chance to make a sound before he died. At this moment, the sound of the last person's throat breaking and the sound of four corpses falling to the ground resounded at the same time. Jun Xia was gasping for breath after everything was completed. With the current physical quality of his body, it was a little difficult to complete such a difficult movement. Jun Moxie had almost hollowed out this body. If he hadn't been reborn and trained for a month, it would have been impossible for him to complete the series of battles just now. Even so, the time was too short. He was completely overdrawn. When his spirit relaxed, he was no longer able to withstand the backlash of such a violent movement. He only felt pain all over his body. His muscles and bones felt as if they were about to break. It was a kind of pain that penetrated deep into his heart and lungs. The last person let out a wah sound as he spat out a mouthful of blood. This blood sprayed directly onto Jun Xia's face. His body was like a gold ingot. His eyes were filled with remorse as he looked at Jun Xia. He then said in a hoarse voice, "You're not Earth." He finally came to his senses as he was about to die. This person in front of him was definitely not an Earth Xian expert. What a pig's brain. Jun Xia sighed. He then looked at him and said regretfully, if he really was an Earth Xian expert, why would he need to mount a sneak attack to deal with trash like you? A strange gurgling sound came from that person's throat. His eyes suddenly bulged out in anger. His face was filled with unwillingness and anger. His body arched up. He didn't know where he got the strength from. He raised his trembling hand and pointed at Jun Xia. He wanted to say something, but didn't say anything. He only stared at Jun Xia for a long time. Then, he fell to the ground with a "pa" sound. He twitched for a while, and then stopped breathing. His eyes were still wide open. He had died with a remaining grievance. He had originally still been breathing. He knew that he would die without a doubt. But, he could still hold on for a while. He wouldn't die like this. How could he have known that Jun Xia's words would directly anger him to death? He quickly circled around, retrieving the money darts and flying daggers one by one. Then, he conveniently searched the bodies of the 6 men. Jun Xia's expression was relaxed and his movements were natural. It was as though he was merely going through his own pockets, not caring about the 6 bloody corpses at all. His life as an assassin in his past life had trained him to the point where he would remain calm even if Emtitai were to collapse before him. Jun Xia had also seen much more bloody scenes. Finally, he found a small bag in the arms of the silver-level expert. Weighing it in his hand, Jun Xia reached out to pick up the bamboo hat that had fallen to the side. He casually tucked it under his ribs and took a few big strides. He had already turned the corner. The heavy rain fell behind Jun Xia like a huge curtain from the sky to the ground. Suddenly, Jun Xia and the bloody scene became two different worlds. Temporarily first in the list of new books, in imminent danger. Brothers and sisters, it's all up to you. Feng Ling shamelessly asked Zhou Dian and Zhou Tui, brothers and sisters, can you take another step? Chapter 38. At the end of the street, the rain was pouring, and the strands of red gradually faded away, leaving only 6 corpses lying there quietly. One of the corpses had its eyes wide open, glaring angrily at the sky, its face full of unwillingness. After a few detours, Jun Xia carefully turned to the road back to the Jun family's residence. Rainwater poured down from above, but Jun Xia leisurely walked forward. He did not bother to cover himself. The blood stains on his body and face had been washed away, leaving nothing behind. Even if he were to wash them clean now, he would only be able to see a dark brown patch. He would not be able to tell that it was the blood of 6 men. Furthermore, with Jun Xia's current level of strength, he would not be a match for even one of them. This was the blood of a silver-level expert and 5 9th-level Xian practitioners. Just as Jun Xia was about to step through the gates of the Jun residence, a tall figure pierced through the heavy curtain of rain, piercing through the sky like a rocket. In a flash, the figure arrived at the intersection of the street. Seeing the 6 people lying on the ground in disarray, the figure was caught off guard. The figure swept forward and lightly patted the bodies of the 6 people, but found nothing. He suddenly stood up, and his eyes were extremely gloomy. This person wore a strange mask on his face, and it was impossible to see what he looked like, but his every move was extremely calm, as if he was doing something heavy with ease. With a swoosh, he flew directly to a big tree that was 50 feet away, and with another leap, he was already standing on the treetop, looking around. 2 leaps, without the slightest bit of smoke and fire, as if it did not take any effort. The golden light flickered slightly, and it was a gold-level expert. His lightning-like gaze pierced through the curtain of rain and carefully scanned the vast surroundings. Suddenly, he leaped down from the tree and circled around the 6 corpses in the pouring rain. Then, he followed the direction where the blood wisps dispersed and moved forward step by step. Even though he was moving forward step by step, his speed was actually faster than an ordinary expert running at full speed. That direction was the direction that Jun Xia had left from here. This person was actually so meticulous, under the washing of the rain, he could actually find the right direction at a glance. The man followed the trail, circled around a few times, then suddenly stopped and cursed in a low voice. It turned out that the few detours that Jun Xia had taken were actually a full circle. This mysterious gold-leveled expert had followed the detour and found himself back at the starting point. Who is it? Who could it be? What a profound thought. This person said to himself in a low voice. He raised his head towards the sky and began to ponder. Who was it that disrupted my plan? Who could have grasped this opportunity so perfectly? Who was it that could see through his plan? He knows my plan. The timing of this operation was completely impromptu. Even he did not know about it beforehand. Even the heavy rain was unexpected. So it wasn't a problem on his side, but where did the problem lie? Could it be? The mysterious man thought hard, combing through every bit of information, even investigating the people around him one by one. This person had always been a schemer. Everything was within his grasp, and he would only take action after planning. His thoughts could be said to be extremely meticulous. Just like today's incident, even if he was beaten to death, he would never believe that there was such a coincidence in this world. That was why he had formed a fixed line of thought from the beginning. He believed that this was definitely a conspiracy by a person or an organization or a family against him or his own family. From this starting point, of course, it was 108,000 miles away from the truth. This person would never have thought that this matter was actually a coincidence from the start. A very interesting coincidence. If that silver-leveled expert did not expose Jun Xia's whereabouts, with Jun Xia's character, he would definitely not rashly incur enmity with others before his strength was fully displayed. If the person discovered by the silver-leveled expert was not so coincidentally Jun Xia, but an ordinary person, he could have safely brought the item back. Even if that person had arrived a little earlier, with Jun Xie's current strength, he would definitely not be this person's match. All these were coincidences. Only this kind of coincidence was the inevitable development of events. How could everything in the world go according to one's wishes? Although Jun Xie had coincidentally taken away the item that he urgently needed, Jun Xie himself did not even know what it was or what use it had. It was a coincidence that Jun Xie had come out this time. It was nearing the Mid-Autumn Festival in his previous life, and an autumn rain had evoked the lingering nostalgia in Jun Xie's heart. However, there was no one in this world that he could confide in. Even if he wanted to find a place like the bar in his previous life, he could not find it. It was obviously not suitable for him to be depressed at home. Moreover, Jun Xie did not wish to let others see his weak side, so he came out to drink to drown his sorrows. He did not expect that the middle-aged man's words would ruin his state of mind. The more he drank, the worse it tasted. In the end, he could not even swallow it, and finally left after a few words of disdain. Feeling vexed, Jun Xie wandered around the streets, as if drenched in the heavy rain would make his heart feel better. Then, he, coincidentally, encountered the scene in front of him. Under all kinds of coincidences, Jun Xie finally encountered the few people who had stolen something from the Tang family and had escaped with great difficulty. Coincidentally, he overheard their conversation. Jun Xie's current strength was not good enough, so he originally planned to just let it go. After all, Jun Xie, who had traveled to this world, did not have a good impression of the Tang family. If the Tang family's things were lost, then so be it. He did not care about it, and it had nothing to do with him. However, he did not expect that the few fellows who were like stray dogs would actually discover him. This made it impossible for Jun Xie to retreat, especially since the strength of these fellows was higher than the current Jun Xie. Even if he wanted to flee, he could not. With no other way, Jun Xie had to use his hidden weapon skills, taking advantage of the timing to help himself, and then cast a trick to kill these people in one fell swoop. Since they were all dead, Jun Xie naturally did not mind taking something, conveniently. Therefore, this thing that was extremely important to this mysterious person fell into the hands of Jun Xie in this seemingly infinite coincidence, seemingly intentionally or unintentionally. There were so many things, and any one of them was not eye-catching. But when put together, it was so coincidental that it was shocking. Those who took advantage of it did not know what was going on, and those who had their plans ruined were even more confused. There were so many coincidences, it was simply the work of ghosts and gods. Even God had sent a heavy rain to liven things up. This really could not be said to be God's will, or a coincidence facilitated by God. Seeing that things had come to this point, the mysterious person was about to leave when he suddenly heard the noise of people surrounding him in a mess. The guards of the Tang family were mobilized in large numbers, and they were searching this place. He could not help but let out a long sigh. Golden light flashed, and 6 sounds rang out in succession. The heads of the 6 people on the ground exploded one by one, and their original faces could no longer be seen clearly. With a flick of his sleeve, he leaped into the curtain of rain with a swoosh, and instantly disappeared. When the people of the Tang family came to this street corner, they only saw 6 corpses with their brains burst out, and the thing that needed to be recovered had already disappeared without a trace. Jun Xie did not have the slightest idea that he had unintentionally destroyed an important plan by the biggest enemy of the Jun family, and he had casually taken back the thing that the person regarded as a treasure, like picking up trash. He even felt very wronged. Originally, I only wanted to be drenched in the rain, miss home, and enjoy the loneliness of homesickness, but the atmosphere was completely destroyed by these damn things. How depressing, everything really goes wrong. I tried to drown my sorrows in alcohol, but met someone who did not know what was good for him, and treated that kind of inferior distilled wine as the best wine in the world. How pitiful and ridiculous. I came out to be drenched in the rain, but I got drenched and killed someone. My luck is really bad. Jun Xie looked up to the sky and let out a long sigh. Touching the small bag in his arms, he stepped into the Jun family's front door. Sorry, it's too late. Something really happened that made me dumbfounded. Our legend of Ling Tian was plagiarized, changed the appearance, changed the name, and the story plot and text were the same, and published on another website under the name of original work. This kind of thing also happened. Chapter 39. The torrential downpour had finally lessened, but the rain was still heavy. Jun Xie walked at a leisurely pace, causing the servants who saw him through the doors and windows to be greatly surprised. They all asked each other, only God knows what kind of madness this young master is up to this time. However, compared to his craziness of causing trouble, the madness in front of them was still acceptable, but it was still somewhat abnormal. Why is he running out in such a heavy rain? When he walked to the garden, suddenly a whimpering sound of a flute came through the rain. The sound was full of sorrow that could not be dispersed. Just by listening to this sound, one could imagine the deep sorrow and resentment in the heart of the person playing the flute. But at this moment, when Jun Xie heard it, it coincided with his mood, and he couldn't help but follow the sound. In a pavilion in the middle of the garden, a woman dressed in snow-white clothes sat alone on a stone bench with her back facing Jun Xie. Her shoulders were slender, her hair was tied up high like dark clouds, and her slender waist was slender. Just by looking at her back, one could already feel that this woman was so cold and refined. But in this bleak autumn rain, accompanied by the sad and melodious sound of the flute, it made the woman look even more lonely. Jun Xie stood quietly in the rain outside the pavilion, slightly closed his eyes, listening to the melodious sound of the flute. His mind was in a trance, as if he was listening to his favorite song from the Dream of the Red Chamber in his previous life, the song, Frowning Eyebrows, the same sorrow, Jun Xie felt even more intoxicated. In such a storm and such an autumn, for whom was she sad, for whom was she suffering? At this moment, Jun Xie suddenly felt that the mood of the woman in front of him was as lonely and desolate as he was. But compared to himself, there was more of a sense of helplessness. The autumn rain was endless. In this mournful sound of the flute, even the sound of the wind seemed to become sobbing. The sound of the flute gradually became low, like a thin thread swaying in the wind, and finally disappeared. The woman in white sat still, gently put down the jade flute in her hand, and faintly sighed. The sigh disappeared in the wind and rain, appearing so powerless. Jun Xie could not help but sigh softly. Although the voice was soft, the woman was shocked. She quickly turned around and looked at Jun Xie with her beautiful eyes. Surprise appeared on her face, which turned into a hint of disgust and contempt. "It's you. The sound of the flute is not bad, very beautiful." Jun Xie smiled faintly and leisurely walked into the pavilion. The rainwater on his body instantly soaked a large area on the ground. "Sister-in-law, why are you in such a good mood today?" This woman had a cold expression on her face. Her facial features were picturesque, and she had a graceful bearing. But, she had a cold and quiet temperament. She was Jun Moxie's sister-in-law, and also his wife, Guan Qinghan. She was the daughter of the illustrious Guan family, and was also famous for being a talented woman in Tianxiang. In fact, it was not appropriate to call her his wife. The two had been engaged since childhood. 3 years ago, when Jun Moyo was 22 and Guan Qinghan was 18, the two families had been preparing for their marriage. But the war with the Shenxia Empire had coincidentally broken out. Jun Moyo and his younger brother Jun Macho had been appointed as the vanguard. Therefore, the two families had agreed that when Jun Moyo returned from victory, the two would be married. And, this marriage would be finished. Before the war, they had already gone through the procedures of the betrothal gifts. So, it could be said that Guan Qinghan was already a member of the Jun family. Once Jun Moyo returned, the wedding date would be held. Even the wedding date had been set. But, they had never expected that Jun Moyo would never return, and that he would be buried in the battlefield. This had caused this pair of childhood sweethearts to be separated from each other in the world of heaven and earth. The pitiful bones of the Wuding River were still in their dreams. When the grievous news came, Guan Qinghan fainted on the spot. After that, she disregarded her family's advice and resolutely moved into the Jun family. She took on the identity of the Jun family's eldest grandchild and took care of the elderly. Grandpa Jun had repeatedly suggested that there was no need for this. In any case, they were not officially married. Moreover, with Guan Qinghan's appearance and family background, there was no need for her to worry about not having a good marriage. He even suggested that the Jun family should write the divorce papers and annul the marriage papers. Then, Guan Qinghan would return her freedom. Guan Qinghan was adamant in her refusal. The elders of the two families were afraid that she would take things too hard and get into trouble again. So, they could only acquiesce. They were waiting for her to change her mind. Then, they would send her back to the Guan family. Everyone in the Jun family, from Grandpa Jun and Jun Wui to the servants, treated this young mistress with great respect. No one dared to neglect her. The only person in the Jun family who could make Guan Qinghan unhappy was her brother-in-law, Jun Moxie. That debauchee Jun Xia had been quite restless ever since this beautiful and generous sister-in-law had moved in. His words and actions had been frivolous and frivolous. This had made Guan Qinghan extremely disgusted. She couldn't bear it any longer. So, she had ruthlessly taught him a lesson. This Miss Guan wasn't just a talented woman. She was also quite proficient in martial arts. Although she hadn't reached the silver level, she was already at the peak of the 9th level. So, dealing with Jun Xia was a very easy task. However, this debauchee did not change his lecherous nature. He also knew that his beautiful sister-in-law would not be too harsh on him. So, he secretly spied on her. When Guan Qinghan saw such a troublemaker, she had no other choice but to stay in her room for a long time. Today, when she saw the heavy rain, her heart was filled with sorrow. Suddenly, she could not help but feel sad. So, she came to the pavilion and used the flute to express her sorrow. Unexpectedly, this debauchee braved the rain to come here. You are really lustful. Don't you know that my 9th level Xian Qi cultivation is far higher than yours? If I wanted to teach you a lesson, it would be as easy as lifting a finger. I did not teach you a lesson because I did not want to alarm the Jun family. I also did not want to hurt the elders. Do you really think I am afraid of you? Oh, I had nothing to do, so I casually played the flute. Could it be that third young master is also an expert in this field? Hearing Jun Xia's words, Guan Qinghan's heart was filled with disgust. What does a debauchee like you know about the flute? You are just taking the opportunity to strike up a conversation with me. She looked at him coldly. She wanted to see what new tricks he had up his sleeves today. Naturally, her reply was also filled with hidden meaning. With Jun Xia's intelligence, how could he not understand? However, he also admired the woman in front of him. He also understood that Jun Moxie was unbearable in the past. It was no wonder that others looked down on him. Towards Guan Qinghan's deep love and persistence, he also had some admiration in his heart. The flute's sound is the heart of the heart. The past is the past. Sister-in-law, it is better for you to relax. Everything will pass. Jun Xia hesitated for a moment before advising. Guan Qinghan snorted. Her pretty face was as cold as ice. She turned her body and ignored him. Jun Xia felt very bored. With his personality, if you ignore me, I will ignore you. So what if I am a beautiful woman? Can a beautiful woman give me a cold face? He reluctantly said, I have been presumptuous and disturbed sister-in-law. I will take my leave. He smiled and turned to leave without hesitation. You are ignoring me. Good. I will go back to sleep. Guan Qinghan was surprised. She thought that this brat was going to pester her again and try to get close to her, but she never expected that he would actually say something sensible this time. He did not pester her and turned to leave, not even caring about the heavy rain outside. Looking at Jun Xia's back in the rain, Guan Qinghan opened her mouth. She wanted to say something but stopped. However, her beautiful eyes flashed. She suddenly realized that today's brother-in-law was really different from the past. In the past, this guy always had a naughty smile on his face. His eyes were not honest at all. He would look everywhere. When he saw her, he would often drool. However, when she recalled his expression and actions just now, there was not the slightest bit of frivolity. He was actually very solemn and very calm. Moreover, his gaze did not wander over to her. Also, looking at his back view as he walked away, his back was straight, and he seemed very calm as he walked in the rain. Has he really changed? Guan Qinghan laughed coldly in her heart. It must be because his pestering didn't work, so he changed to a gentleman to approach her. Humph, June Moxie, how can I fall for your trick? Even if you change your face 1,000 times, in my heart, you will always be that shameless wastrel. It will never change. It's raining so heavily, and you came here just to say a few words to me. Only a ghost would believe you. The more you act like this, the more guilty you are. How can you be a gentleman? Would anyone believe you? Guan Qinghan's pretty face instantly turned as cold as ice. But this guy did not show the slightest bit of surprise when he saw me today. Humph. Begging for votes at midnight. Protect asterisk asterisk asterisk. Chapter 40. Along the way, Jun Xie's heart was filled with regret. This sister-in-law of his, Guan Qinghan, was only 21 years old, the most beautiful age of her life. She was also a stunning beauty, yet she was willing to become a widow in the Jun family, a widow. If this was in his previous life, it would be an inconceivable thing. But here, it was so natural, and it was indeed a great sorrow. It was simply a waste of resources. If I could, Jun Xie suddenly had such a thought, and he was suddenly shocked. This is not like my style of speaking and acting. I may sympathize, but how can I have such a dirty thought? This is not something I can think of. Could it be that hateful Jun Moxie? His soul has already flown away, but there is still such a residual effect. Jun Xie cursed in his heart. Jun Xie walked into the room, and he didn't even have time to respond to the little girl's greeting. He sat down with a frown, and thought about his every move since crossing over, and felt that something was wrong. Although there were times in his previous life when he was young and frivolous, it was basically a disguise to get close to his goal, and at best, it was just an act. Jun Xie's character had always been cold and arrogant, close to callous. Sometimes, it could even be said that he was cold-blooded. However, ever since he transmigrated here, he found that his character had unknowingly changed so much. Admittedly, with Jun Moxie's identity as a debauchee, this kind of behavior is more feasible, and it is also the best cover. But, what exactly is in my heart? I need to know in my heart. I must absolutely not let the original character of this body of Jun Moxie prevail. But I still need to use this character as a camouflage. Maintain my original heart, conform to external things, but in the end, I am still me, the evil monarch, Jun Xie. Jun Xie's eyes shot out a bright light. The heaven and earth are heartless, treating all living things as straw dogs. The evil monarch is heartless, trampling on a different world. After making up his mind, he felt his entire body relax. He also instantly thought of something else. He took out the bag that he had picked up along the way and his heart was moved. Inside this bundle was something that they had to obtain even at the cost of the lives of 20 experts. Although he didn't know who the mastermind was, Jun Xie knew that no one would dare to covet something that belonged to the Tang family. If it wasn't a top-grade item, no one would take such a huge risk to do such a thing. Thinking of this, Jun Xie's curiosity was aroused. He had planned to return it to the Tang family, but now he had a desire to open it and have a look. This was the demeanor of the evil monarch. Acting on his thoughts and going straight to his heart. Jun Xie reached out with his hand. With a "chi" sound, he tore open the bundle. Inside was a small square wooden box. A faint fragrance wafted out from the wooden box. The surface of the wooden box was engraved with faint golden lines. This wood was surprisingly the best quality golden sandalwood. Moreover, it was a whole piece of golden sandalwood, and a hole was dug in it. Just this wooden box alone was worth a lot. Opening the wooden box, a cold air immediately came out. Inside the wooden box, there was another white jade box. It was cold to the touch. It was actually a top-grade cold jade. Looking at the color and material, this piece of cold jade was an item that could topple cities. Jun Xia sucked in a breath of cold air. What on earth was this item that was so important? It needed to be stored in such a precious cold jade box. Carefully opening the jade box, Jun Xia saw a round object inside. The object was wrapped in a layer of colorful animal skin, exuding a strange luster. Jun Xia had no knowledge of this, nor did he know anything about it. Naturally, he did not find it strange. If someone who knew saw it, they would immediately be shocked. This was the fur of a 9th-level Xian beast. It was almost equivalent to the existence of the great master Shen Xian. Just the golden sandalwood box, the top-grade cold jade, and the fur of a 9th-level Xian beast, any one of them was already a priceless treasure. And these 3 items were actually just the outer packaging. Jun Xia held the item wrapped in the animal skin in his hand. Inside, there seemed to be a round object the size of a ping-pong ball. Opening it, Jun Xia couldn't help but be disappointed. It was a strange dark red object that was close to black in color. The texture was like stone, but not stone, like jade, but not jade. When he squeezed it hard, it seemed to have a slight elasticity. Just looking at the appearance of this object, it was really ordinary. Suddenly, Jun Xia's mind moved. His mind flashed, and he blurted out, "Xian Dan." Although he hadn't seen what Xian Dan looked like, Jun Xia knew that it was a good thing. Only 3rd-level Xian beasts could condense Xian Dan. Just like this Xian Dan, with the power and influence of the Tang family, they actually treated it like a treasure. Moreover, it even attracted people who didn't hesitate to kill a fly on a tiger's head to covet it. Thinking about it, it shouldn't be something simple. It should be at least 7th-level Xian Dan. Or even higher. Jun Xia didn't know that this Xian Dan was obtained by the Tang family's old master, Tang Wanli, at a great cost. The Xian Dan of the 9th-level Xian beast, the golden winged tiger, contained an extremely large amount of energy. This Xian Dan, for low-level Xian Qi cultivators, was almost useless because it couldn't be activated. However, when the Xian Qi cultivation reached Earth level and above, it could be activated under certain conditions. Then, it could absorb the enormous energy contained in the Xian Dan for one's own use. As for how much energy could be absorbed, it depended on the individual's talent. However, when the Xian Qi cultivation reached the Earth Xian realm, every step forward was extremely difficult. But this Xian Dan could directly raise the Earth Xian realm to the Tian Xian realm. To a Xian Qi cultivator, this was simply a treasure that defied the natural order. As mentioned before, it was already extremely difficult to kill a 8th-level Xian beast, not to mention killing a 9th-level Xian beast to obtain the Xian Dan. Under normal circumstances, this was something that would never happen. A great master Shen Xian expert could defeat a 9th-level Xian beast, but in terms of killing it, perhaps even 2 great master Shen Xian experts working together might not be able to do it. The strength and speed of a 9th-level Xian beast could be described as terrifying. If it couldn't win and wanted to escape, no one could stop it. Not to mention the golden winged tiger, a Xian beast with the ability to fly. It was something that couldn't even be thought of. In the past, Tang Wanli had accidentally discovered a great master Shen Xian expert who was severely injured and discovered that the Xian Dan was on him. He paid the lives of dozens of jade and gold level experts and several earth Xian experts to obtain this Xian Dan. Regardless of how the great master Shen Xian expert got his hands on the Xian Dan, it would be an exaggeration to say that this Xian Dan was unique in this world. However, it could be said that there were no more than 3 of them in this world. The reason why Li Yuran was so eager to obtain this Xian Dan was naturally because he had a very important use for it. However, he absolutely didn't expect that ever since he had received this information several years ago, he had begun to meticulously plan and bribe the people of the Tang residence. He had arranged for spies to infiltrate the Tang residence step by step, and had painstakingly and carefully investigated for information. It wasn't until 3 months ago that he found out where the Xian Dan was hidden. However, because Old Master Tang basically didn't go out, and he was guarded by 4 top-notch experts, he hadn't had a chance to find it. This time, he had finally obtained an excellent opportunity. Old Master Tang had gone out, and he had even brought 3 of the experts with him. Moreover, it was a heaven-sent opportunity. An unusually large rainstorm had fallen, and the timing, location, and manpower were all in place. He had sent out a top-notch expert to lead the remaining expert of the Tang residence away, and then sent another 20 people to infiltrate the Tang residence. They had finally succeeded by coordinating from both inside and outside, but they had also paid the price of 20 lives. It had been a great success up to this point. Using a mere 20 lives to obtain this Xian Dan was undoubtedly worth it. However, it was a pity that they had encountered Jun Xia just before they succeeded. Several years of planning, thousands of plans, and tens of thousands of calculations had all turned into fishing the moon out of the water. They had made wedding clothes for someone else. One could well imagine how depressed Li Yuan was right now. Recommend a good book. Famous Dr. Juju's Bugs Devour the World. Famous Dr. Juju got married in April. Let us all wish him a happy marriage and a healthy son soon. Chapter 41. Jun Xia naturally didn't know that he had such a heaven-defying treasure in his hands. He was worried. If he returned it to the Tang family, how could he explain why this thing fell into his hands? If he didn't return it to the Tang family, what was the use of keeping it by his side? He didn't even know what this thing was, let alone its true value. After thinking for a long time, he still couldn't figure it out. He casually wrapped up the Xian Dan, put it into a cold jade box, and then packed it in a golden sandalwood box. He weighed it in his hand, and then put it next to the pillow at the head of the bed. After thinking for a while, he pushed it in and pulled up a pillow towel to cover it. This didn't mean that Jun Xia realized the value of this thing and wanted to keep it close to his body, but he had heard that the fragrance of golden sandalwood was very helpful for sleep. In the past, there was a gentleman who bought the casket and returned the pearls, which made him laugh for 1,000 years. But he didn't know if what Jun Xia did today was also. Night fell, and the heavy rain gradually stopped. Old Master Tang Wanli's white hair all stood up. He was really angry, and he flew into a rage. He went to find trouble with the Li and Meng families with a belly full of anger, but when he arrived at the Li family, he was sent out with a soft knife. He went to the Meng family angrily to show off his power, and actually fulfilled his wish, causing the whole Meng family to be in a mess. But when he arrived, it started raining heavily. Seeing that he couldn't go back, old Master Tang became more and more depressed. He simply flew into a rage at the Meng family, scolding everyone in the Meng family. Who knew that when he was venting, his family members came to report that their house had been robbed. Old Master Tang's head suddenly buzzed, and all the blood in his body rushed to his head. He came to find trouble with others, but his own house was immediately turned upside down by others. He had just come here to look for trouble, but his own house was immediately turned upside down by someone else. Furthermore, it was a mess caused by someone working together from the inside and outside. Old Master Tang didn't need to ask what was missing. He already knew that it must be something important that was related to him. If it wasn't something that belonged to him, his family wouldn't have come to inform him at this critical juncture in such a heavy storm. As for his most important possession, if one were to compare the value, it would naturally be the Xian core. Thinking of this, the old man held on to the possibility that it was the Xian core that had been stolen, so he hastily asked. As long as it wasn't the Xian core that had been stolen, everything else was fine. Unfortunately, what he was afraid of had come true. It was indeed his lifeblood, the Xian core. The old man's vision darkened and he almost fainted. Ever since he obtained this item, Tang Wanli knew that he had obtained a treasure. As long as the younger generation diligently practiced and raised their Xian Qi cultivation to the Earth Xian realm, even if he had to sacrifice his old face, he could still invite a few masters of the Tian Xian level, or even the Supreme Shen Xian level to come and help him. With this Xian Dan, he could push his younger generation to the realm of the Tian Xian level. That way, as long as there was a Tian Xian level master in charge, the Tang family's glory would at least be fine as long as the Tian Xian level master was still alive. But he was already old. Even if he used this Xian Dan to raise his cultivation, he might not be able to live much longer. Only when he reached the realm of the supreme Shen Xian could it be possible to prolong his life. But he definitely did not have that talent. Even if he relied on this rare treasure, there was no hope. Of his two sons, one was a good-for-nothing, and the other was quite talented, but his talent was that he disliked martial arts and preferred literature. His qi cultivation stopped at the 9th level, and he didn't even rush to the silver level. Although it was smooth sailing in the officialdom, it was not a good feeling to not have a top expert to hold the fort, and the taste of life and death was in the hands of others. Although civil and military affairs were under the jurisdiction of His Majesty the Emperor, as long as there was a strong Tian Xian level master in the family, even if the Emperor wanted to deal with him, he would have to think carefully. Grandfather Tang had no other choice but to settle for the next best thing and place all his hopes on his grandson. Finally, Grandfather Tang was gratified to find out that there were a few in his grandson's generation who did not disappoint him. Aside from the eldest, Tang Yuan, who did not focus on proper work, the other 3 grandsons all revered strength and were more diligent in their cultivation of profound energy. This greatly comforted Grandfather Tang's heart. He hoped that within 10 years, one of his grandchildren would be able to enter the Earth Xian realm. Furthermore, his own body was still in good health. No matter what, he could still fight for another 10 years for the Tang family. If this Xian Dan was used on his grandchildren, the effect would be better than using it on his sons. If everything went smoothly, within at least 100 years, the Tang family would be safe, no matter if it was in the imperial court or outside. Who would have thought that after waiting for so many years, painstakingly gathering some supplementary medicinal ingredients, and his grandchildren had successfully broken through to the silver level at such a young age? Just a few more years and they would be able to meet all the requirements. The most important thing would be stolen at this critical juncture. Tang Yuan was like a fox exploiting the tiger's might, holding 1,500,000 taels of silver in his hand. He grabbed Meng Haizu's collar and insisted on redeeming the accessory and the precious jade on the spot. How could Meng Haizu take it out? He kept bowing and saying good things, so anxious that beads of sweat appeared on his face. Just when he was at his wit's end, old Master Tang issued an order to return home immediately. He kicked Fatty, who was still chattering, and was about to leave anxiously. Before leaving, Tang Yuan roared fiercely, "If I don't hand over the sword and the precious jade within 3 days, I will go to His Majesty the Emperor to reason things out." This sentence scared Meng Haizu so much that he almost pissed his pants. Of course, the price for Tang Yuan's words was to be kicked twice by old Master Tang. He rolled back and forth like a rubber ball. Rushing home in a hurry, old Master Tang flew into a rage. All the elite guards of the Tang family were sent out to conduct a massive search. Old Master Tang ordered them to preserve the 16 corpses that were shot in his house and the 6 people who died mysteriously at the street corner. Other than having people identify them every day, he also drew pictures and distributed them through the Ministry of Justice. He offered a reward of 100,000 taels of silver in order to obtain the origins of these people. As for the few servants who had escaped from his house, he doubled the bounty on them. He vowed to find the mastermind behind all of this. Within a day, the capital was shaken. And 3 days later, the world was shaken. At the same time, Li Yuan's Li family did not make any moves on the surface. They looked like they were watching the show, but secretly, they were also swift and decisive. Li Yuan strictly interrogated everyone who knew about this matter. If there was even the slightest suspicion, they would be tortured. All kinds of torture methods were endless. She would rather kill 1,000 wrongly than let one go. She had to find out who was going against her. In just 2 days, several people had died because they could not bear the torture. At the same time, the Li family's secret forces began to take action, asking around and infiltrating. All the big families in the capital vaguely sensed that this was very unusual. They took strict precautions to protect themselves and avoid getting involved in this big whirlpool. At the same time, they sent people to ask around to find out what was going on with the Tang family. For a moment, the whole capital was in turmoil and undercurrents were surging. The prison cells of the Ministry of Justice were suddenly full. All the forces of the Tang family were mobilized, causing an earthquake in the capital. Everyone was in danger. There was no news for a long time. Old Master Tang Wanli was burning with anxiety and flew into a rage every day. Li Yuan looked gentle on the surface, but the coldness in the depths of her eyes was like two poisonous cobras. Whoever she stared at, the lightest would be a life, the heaviest would be the death of the whole family. However, Jun Xia, who had really benefited from this, did not know anything. He was still leisurely wandering in his own house. At night, he hugged the golden sandalwood to sleep. He sighed. It turned out that it was really good for sleep. In his mind, he was still wondering why he was thinking about his widowed sister-in-law. Chapter 42. This was not to say that the Jun family had too many eyes and ears, but rather, the Jun family's intelligence agency had gotten used to this. They would never give any information to this young master. Moreover, this young master had been rather busy these few days. He was either cultivating or exploring the secrets of the exquisite Hongjun pagoda, or supervising the training of the guards in the mansion. He had even managed to make a lot of lees fermenting in his busy schedule. So much so that Jun Xia only found out a few days after such a huge incident had happened in the capital. Of course, there was another reason why the Jun family was so quiet. Whether it was the Tang family or the Li family, they had never looked at the Jun family with suspicion. Not to mention the debauchee Jun. The entire Jun family consisted of the old, the young, the crippled, and the debauchee. Grandpa Jun had always been open and aboveboard. This was something that even his enemies had no choice but to admit. So, he naturally wouldn't do such a thing. As for Jun Moxie, they felt that even thinking about him was an insult to the 6 people who had died on the street. Who would believe that this good-for-nothing debauchee Jun Moxie had the ability to kill a silver-leveled expert and 5 level 9 Xian experts in one fell swoop? However, not everyone in the Jun family was unscathed. Because Jun Sunshao had so much time on his hands these few days, in just a few short days, he had tormented every single one of the guards to the point of losing a layer of their skin. However, not a single one of the guards had any complaints. The reason was simple. They were embarrassed, really embarrassed, and could not open their mouths. If the guards had lost a layer of their skin, then Jun Xia had lost 3 layers of his skin. Perhaps even more. In the past few days, the training that Jun Xia had put him through was something that even an iron-blooded general like Jun Wui could not help but feel apprehensive. The day's work and rest schedule. Before dawn, Jun Xia had already woken up from his sleep. In the courtyard, Jun Xia had set up a hidden corner. It was also a place where the wind blew in from all directions. The reason why he was not in his room was because he wanted to get closer to the world and nature. The fresh air of the morning was a gift from nature. 2 hours later, he tied a heavy sandbag to his body, arms, and wrists. Then, he began the training of all kinds of basic movements. Punches, straight punches, swings, uppercuts, kicks, side kicks, and back kicks. There was no rest or interval in between. After completing this set, he immediately went on to do push-ups, sit-ups, belly wraps, duck steps, frog jumps, leg presses, shoulder suspensions, and hangs upside down. After a round of training, his body basically had no sweat left. All the muscles in his body were extremely active. If an ordinary person were to undergo the above training, even if they could endure it, they would at least be half dead from exhaustion. However, this was only the beginning. After stretching his arms and legs, it was finally time to practice a set of boxing moves. Each move was meticulous. These movements, even if it was just for show but not practical, would probably cause him to sweat profusely. Not to mention, strictly according to the standards. Every punch, from the toes to the heels, then the ankle twisting, the calf muscles transferring, the leg bending, the thigh bearing the weight, and the waist transferring all the strength into a twisting motion. Then, this strength converged into a torrent and was transferred to the shoulder, driving the entire arm. Basically, it was using all the strength in the body to throw this punch. Every punch was also with all his strength. There was once a martial arts expert who said, "Don't just look at a simple punch and a kick. One must know that this punch and kick required the whole body to coordinate, all the muscles participating in the operation, in order to unleash the greatest power." Some people could kill a person with a punch, but some people would end up spraining their own wrists with a punch. This was the reason. It was the same for all the other movements. Even if it was a real punch, it was still martial arts. The foundation of martial arts lay in the simple and ordinary basic training. The pinnacle of martial arts was also simple and ordinary, returning to the natural state. However, the simple and ordinary basic training was the best way to hone a martial artist's heart and foundation. Moreover, Jun Xia had tied sandbags to all the joints of his body. This was simply increasing the difficulty by more than 10 times. And the amount of physical strength needed was 10 times more. However, this level of difficulty was only the beginning of Jun Xia's official day of training. The fierce fighting in the rainy night gave Jun Xia an urgent desire to improve his strength. This body was too weak. After Jun Xia went through all the systematic training, the Jun family's bodyguards appeared in front of him. Then, they began the cruel training that belonged to them for the day. Jun Xia proposed every training, and he would train with the team and complete it together. These training methods were the training methods that Jun Xia used to train super assassins in his previous life. It could be said that it was a hellish training. It could even be said that he would rather go to hell than endure this kind of inhuman devil training. In Jun Xia's previous life, there was a secret saying among his fellow apprentices, "I would rather go to the 9th palace of Yama than let the evil monarch lecture me for a day." It could be seen how abnormal Jun Xia's training methods were. Jun Xia only told himself one sentence: if you want to have invincible strength, you must first have invincible tenacity and perseverance. Otherwise, forget it. After that, you must put in more sweat and effort than anyone else. Otherwise, forget it. Only when you have achieved these two things, then you have the right to talk about opportunities. If you don't work hard, even if an opportunity is placed in front of you, you won't be able to grasp it. But hoping that a deity will appear and you will become an immortal is just an unrealistic fantasy. Even if you have the best luck in the world and hold the most powerful treasure in the vast universe, if you don't work hard, you will still be worse than a fart. As long as a beggar works hard, he will have the chance to become a great general who will leave his name in history. But if a great general doesn't work hard, he will also have the chance to leave his name in history. However, he will leave his name in history because of his infamy. If you want to trample on others, or even the whole world, you must first trample on yourself. This is the most basic condition. After he finished training himself, the guards would run 20 laps around the field. Jun Xia would not run 1 lap less than them. The other training also had to be done with extra effort. Although with Jun Xia's current physique, he always dragged it out until the end, he still persisted in every type of training. By the end of the first day's training, Jun Xia was so tired that his mind was in a blur. However, the pride of a gold medal assassin and the dignity of the evil monarch within his heart supported him, allowing him to complete the training without any hesitation. Although this body had undergone the cleansing of the meridians and marrow, Jun Xia had to quickly cultivate the coordination of this body to a perfect state. Only when all the muscles and bones in his body were in perfect harmony would he be able to meet the minimum requirements that Jun Xia had set for himself. And where did all of this come from? From the sweat. For those who don't work hard, even if a meat pie falls from the sky, they will only be crushed to death by the meat pie. And they will never eat it. And now, although Jun Xia already had the exquisite Hongjun Pagoda and the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, regardless of martial arts or Tao, he had to cultivate both internally and externally. If his body was not strong enough, even an immortal's cultivation technique would be destroyed. Originally, the 300 guards were all suspicious of Jun Xia's participation in the training. They thought that their young master was just having fun. But seeing him staggering from the start, they were all laughing in their hearts. They were sure that Jun Xia would not be able to persist for long. Some of them were even sweating profusely as they made a bet. "Ling Chen, please recommend me." By the way, the second round is in the afternoon. Chapter 43. Everyone thought that this young master would collapse at any moment. How could such a hedonistic young master endure such a hellish training? Some even bet that Jun Xia would give up within the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, Jun Xia was staggering from the start. He was still staggering even when it was time for breakfast, but his face was a little paler. He actually managed to persevere. This result made everyone's jaws drop. Hence, they were all speculating whether the young master would participate in the morning training. Most of them still thought that this kind of training had exceeded the third young master's endurance. It was already very rare for him to be able to persevere until now. After breakfast, there was only half an incense stick's worth of time to rest. Unbeknownst to anyone, Jun Xia did not even waste this half an incense stick's worth of time. Returning to his room, he endured his aching muscles and took out several bamboo tubes with steel needles inserted into them and fixed them on the table. There was also a bamboo tube without steel needles inserted into it and placed it behind the bamboo tubes. Each bamboo tube was only as thick as a palm. In order to not touch the bamboo tubes on both sides, his fingers had to hit the hidden bamboo tube at the back. And the requirement was to pass through 3 bamboo tubes and hit the last bamboo tube, to make a sound. This small training was mainly to train the extreme flexibility of his fingers. This training seemed easy to do, but it was actually quite difficult. The steel needles were densely packed. If one used too much strength or was slightly not flexible, the steel needles would pierce into the flesh. That moment of pain was enough to make anyone's hand tremble. And with that tremble, there would at least be a few more needles piercing into the flesh. With a straight face, Jun Xia calmly reached in with his hand that he had trained for the entire morning. When the morning training began, the guards found that Jun Xia was actually standing on the field again. His fingers were dripping with blood, red and swollen, but his complexion was much better. Then, for the entire morning, he actually managed to persevere while swaying. This result made all the guards' jaws drop. More than half of them still thought that such a heavy training load had exceeded the third young master's endurance limit. It was already very commendable that he could persevere until now. He wouldn't be forcing himself in the afternoon, right? However, it was the same in the afternoon. At this time, the guards' competitive spirit was really aroused. Could it be that we, who had been trained for a long time and returned from hundreds of battles, can't be compared to a delicate young master who has never suffered before? This thought made these people who were originally standing on the edge of purgatory step into purgatory. As long as Jun Xia did not stop, the guards would hold their breaths and persevere to the end. In the end, everyone was so tired that they lost their temper. Jun Xia organized the training. Of course, Jun Wui had to be present. Jun Xia had boosted everyone's morale. Jun Wui was very curious about how to train them. But after looking at the training contents for the day, Jun Wui only felt a cold breeze on his back. Seeing the guards carrying the thick logs and running back and forth with all their might, not allowing any rest in between, Jun Wui's eyes widened. But when he saw that Jun Xia was among them, carrying the logs and running as well, he could not help but rub his eyes desperately. He looked again, and rubbed again. Jun Wuyi's eyelids actually hurt from rubbing. If there was nothing wrong with his eyes, then the sun must have risen from the north today. How is this possible? Is this still the debauchee nephew of mine? Isn't this too outrageous? After a day, seeing that Jun Xia finally stopped and stood still, those strong and sturdy guards were exhausted like dead dogs. One by one, they collapsed on the ground like a pile of mud, panting heavily with their mouths wide open. There were more than 300 people in the field, but only a few of them had the strength to stand up. Of the 2 team leaders, one bent over and panted heavily, while the other rolled his eyes and rubbed his waist with all his might. Jun Xia's face was pale, and he was on the verge of collapsing. But he stood straight, and his sharp eyes looked at the people in front of him. Suddenly, he roared, "All of you, stand up for me. Within 3 breaths, whoever cannot stand up will be eliminated. Get out of here and commit suicide." Because he does not deserve to stand here. If he can't even compare to me, this debauchee, what face do he have to live on? Instantly, everyone sprang up like a spring, each of them gritted their teeth and swayed. Dozens of people almost fell down again, but they were held up by the people beside them. If they were really defeated by the third young master, they would really have no face to live on. Jun Xia panted heavily, and Leng Leng looked at them and said in a rough voice, "Now, who still doesn't admit that they are trash?" It's only been a day, and you guys have become like this in just one day. Even a debauchee like me can stand here, but you guys have fallen. Are you guys just going to lie there with a clear conscience? Don't you feel ashamed? Battle-hardened warriors. Bah! The faces of the 300 burly men were filled with shame. One by one, they could not help but lower their heads. Yes, even this young master that everyone had always looked down on had persevered, and was still standing up. What reason did they have to lie down? Jun Xia's entire day of training had been witnessed by all of them. Even with their burly and sturdy bodies, they were still exhausted after enduring the entire day. How did Jun Xia manage to endure it all? It was truly inconceivable. But everyone knew that for the pampered and noble third young master to endure it, it would definitely be much more difficult than them. Everyone could not help but look at Jun Xia with respect and awe in their eyes. Because Jun Xia did not have the slightest bit of foundation in this area. But they had been through a long period of training. Jun Xia Lengleng looked at them, and suddenly turned to leave, leaving behind a sentence: "If this kind of situation happens again tomorrow, all 300 of you will be kicked out. The Jun family does not raise trash. Especially trash that can't even compare to a debauchee." Looking at Jun Xia's back as he left, the observant people could see that Jun Xia's legs, and even every muscle in his body were trembling slightly. This was a situation that could only happen when one was exhausted to the limit. But Jun Xia's face did not show it at all. Just this level of endurance alone was something that no one present could match. Even a debauchee young master could endure such a heavy training load. How could they, the veterans, say that they could not? Especially when the training load was the same as the debauchee young masters, how could they say that it was hard? They could not afford to lose face. If they said that it was hard, they would be despised by their colleagues, but if they were despised by the debauchee young master, they would not be able to live. However, if they were to find out that Jun Xia's body was actually tied with 8 other sandbags, how would they feel about it? Would they feel ashamed to continue living? No one knew that there were at least a dozen places on Jun Xia's body that had been scratched by the sandbags. Blood slowly seeped out along with lymph fluid. Jun Xia's entire day of training was estimated to be at least 3 times more than the amount of training these bodyguards had undergone. This was a terrifying number. If not for the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, with Jun Xia's current physical condition, he would have died of exhaustion 10 times over. But the reason why Jun Xia was like this was to borrow the mystical effects of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, to transcend life and death training, to break through the limits of his body. Although Jun Wui did not know that there were other sandbags on Jun Xia's body, but Jun Xia's astonishing performance today was enough to move this great general who had once commanded thousands of troops. Looking at Jun Xia's gradually disappearing back, Jun Wui's eyes were filled with endless gratification, but his heart was filled with suspicion. Could it be that this is Mo Xia's true colors? This is too hard on myself. There won't be any accidents this way, right? To forge iron, one's own body must be strong. Let me explain. From today until Friday, at 2:00, 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:00 in the afternoon, and 3 o'clock on Saturday. I don't need to say the reason, everyone should be able to see the reason. 2 weeks after the release of the books in the same period have at most reached 70,000 to 80,000 words, and we are already at 110,000 words. There are still 3.5 weeks before the book is published, very far away. Damn it! Brothers and sisters, please forgive me, Feng Ling can't do anything about it. The only thing I can promise is that after the book is published, we will explode for a few days, everyone can have fun together. May the brothers and sisters enjoy reading the book. Very sorry. Bow. Chapter 44. Jun Xia walked steadily back to his room. When Ku'er saw him like this, she almost burst into tears. With trembling hands, she helped him take off his clothes and carefully washed him with clean water. Jun Xia remained standing the entire time. He knew that if he lost his balance and fell down, with his current exhaustion, he would definitely fall into a deep sleep. But as long as he could endure this and regain his strength, it would mean that he had broken through another limit of his body. After wiping his body, he let Ku'er leave. Naked, Jun Xia stood in a standing position and entered into a deep state of meditation. With his mind guarding his soul, the first level of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune began to circulate slowly. Jun Xia suddenly discovered that the rainbow exquisite pagoda in his mind was actually rotating faster than before. Moreover, the heaven and earth spiritual qi emitted from it was also much denser than before. The spiritual qi slowly entered Jun Xia's meridians and flowed along the route. Everywhere it passed, Jun Xia would feel a cool and refreshing feeling. It was as if a cold mountain spring had suddenly poured into his extremely parched throat. The comfort he felt at this moment was indescribable. The mist entered Jun Xia's meridians more and more urgently, slowly restoring Jun Xia's already exhausted body. Jun Xia's entire body gradually became numb and itchy, especially the injured areas. It was as if hundreds of claws were scratching at his heart. Jun Xia firmly controlled his itchy itch and used all his strength to control his mind to enter into a state of cultivation. Slowly, he entered into a state where he forgot about himself and everything else. Unknowingly, time slowly passed. All the injuries on Jun Xia's body gradually stopped oozing clear liquid. They slowly solidified and formed scars. Gradually, the scars on Jun Xia's body slowly wrinkled and hardened. In the end, they fell off bit by bit. A thin layer of skin scraps slowly accumulated at Jun Xia's feet. His skin became as white and smooth as before. The only difference was that it was more flexible. The muscles that had been tightened after a day of high-intensity training trembled unconsciously but rhythmically. Crystal clear liquid slowly seeped out. After the trembling, the muscles slowly relaxed and gradually returned to the state before training. After another wave of numbness and itchiness, they finally relaxed completely. Jun Xia, who had entered into a state of cultivation, was oblivious to all these changes. After his body had forcefully endured the extreme state of exhaustion, what followed next was a comfortable feeling akin to that of a tsunami. His entire consciousness had entered into an ethereal state, akin to a person who was freely swimming in a boundless and tranquil ocean, incomparably contented. This comfortable feeling was akin to the waves of the ocean, crashing in wave after wave. Within his mind, the seven-colored exquisite pagoda was overflowing with a thick layer of mist that grew thicker and thicker. Wave after wave of pure heaven and earth spiritual energy flowed into Jun Xia's body like a tidal wave, washing through every part of his meridians, every inch of his muscles, every part of his tendons. Jun Xia could clearly feel that the thin thread of spiritual energy that was swimming in his meridian was actually growing stronger after being washed by the turbulent spiritual energy. Although the range was not very large, it was indeed growing continuously. Moreover, his mind was incomparably ethereal, as if he did not feel the slightest bit tired. All of his spirit seemed to harmoniously merge with the strange little pagoda in his mind at this moment. That kind of subtle feeling of comfort, even with Jun Xia's steel-like nerves, could not help but be intoxicated by it. Suddenly, the colorful light of the Hongjun pagoda suddenly stopped rotating. Jun Xia's mind shook, and he instantly woke up from that incomparably wonderful state. His mental state also returned from his sea of consciousness to the real world at this moment. The white fog of spiritual energy in his meridian also receded like a tide. Jun Xia only felt that his whole body was full of strength. He slowly opened his eyes, and two sharp rays of light suddenly shot out. He gently moved his body, and all the joints in his body made a series of crisp, pop sounds. In an instant, his body became smooth and his mental state was surprisingly good. The light moonlight gently sprinkled down. Jun Xia walked to the window. The bright moon in the sky was like a plate, and the blue sky was bright and clear. It was the Mid-Autumn Festival. In his original world, the Mid-Autumn Festival was August 15th, and here, there was a Golden Autumn Festival, but it was August 20th. No matter which world the moon was in, the moonlight was always as gentle as water, and the clear light was everywhere. Jun Xia sighed softly. He was surprised to find that there was not too much melancholy and lonely emotion in his heart. It was as if he had already gotten used to everything in the past. The moon was still bright, and the vault of heaven was still the same. We'll still be under the same sky, just take it as a change of location. After carefully inspecting his body once more, Jun Xia discovered that not only had the numerous wounds on his body healed, but even the scars had disappeared without a trace in a single night. His skin was even more supple and smooth than before. Jun Xia couldn't help but stare in shock. Who would have thought that the regenerative ability of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune would be so strong? Originally, he thought that if he continued with this cruel training, he would be able to have the bronze-colored skin of his previous life in a few days' time. He didn't expect that his physical fitness would improve so quickly, but his skin would become smoother the more he trained. What a disappointment! Fortunately, the skin was developing in the direction of flexibility. If the skin became exceptionally soft, how could he go out and meet people? Activating his qi once more, Jun Xia was immediately overjoyed. After a day of crazy training, the effects of this night's training were extremely obvious. The strands of qi in his body had almost doubled in size. If the original qi flow was as thick as a strand of hair, now it had become as thick as a pig's mane. Jun Xia broke out in a cold sweat. Comparing himself like this was really a bit of self-abuse. The flow of qi also became faster. Suddenly, he had an epiphany. The first level of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune had taken another big step forward. What was even more surprising was that he could now use inner vision. This was something that could only be done when one had reached the Xiantian realm. Who would have thought that the art of unlocking heaven's fortune was so miraculous? Although his current strength was far from the Xiantian realm of his previous life, he could already use inner vision. It seemed that this kind of extreme training, after squeezing out all the physical strength in his body, activating the art of unlocking heaven's fortune had unexpected benefits. Following the meridians, Jun Xia finally understood the mysteries of this world's Xian Qi. The so-called Xian Qi cultivation was actually not too different from the cultivation of internal strength. It could be said that it was a special cultivation method for internal strength. Although Xian Qi could not last as long as internal strength, its explosive power was much stronger than that of internal strength. Because of this explosive power, it could not hide this miraculous power well enough. Naturally, it was also not strong enough after effects. The higher the level of Xian Qi cultivation, the more obvious the external effects would be. This was the main reason why there were all kinds of Xian Qi lights. The cultivation method of Xian Qi was almost the same as that of internal strength. It also operated according to a fixed meridian route. For example, below the 9th stage, there was only one meridian. Whether it was the 8 extraordinary meridians or the 12 principal meridians, only one meridian could be opened, forming a meridian. When breaking through to the silver level, another meridian could be opened. This was equivalent to adding another branch, but the internal circulation was still the same, just that the scope was much larger than before. This might be because of the special physique of the people in this world. No wonder every advancement of Xian Qi was extremely painful, like a poisonous snake shedding its skin. How could it feel good to forcibly open a meridian? In the future, when the 12 principal meridians were opened and half of the 8 extraordinary meridians were opened, it would be the realm of the supreme Xinxian. However, there was a prerequisite. Half of the 8 extraordinary meridians must be connected with the conception and governing meridians. Only then would it be the real supreme Xinxian. If you also opened 4 of the 8 extraordinary meridians, but not the conception and governing meridians, you would only be considered as the pseudo-supreme Xinxian. The only thing that surprised Jun Xia was the fact that after reaching the supreme divine Xian realm, he would be able to open up all 12 of the body's main meridians, becoming the primary place for the cultivation of Xian Qi. His dantian would also remain as the storage for Xian Qi. However, out of the 8 extraordinary meridians, only 4 of them need to be opened up. The more difficult ones would be the conception and governing vessels. However, in terms of martial arts, the so-called Supreme Divine Xian would still require 4 of the meridians to be sealed up. So, was there another higher existence above the Supreme Xian? Chapter 45. Was there an even higher existence above Zhizun Xian? Based on the theory of internal energy cultivation, the answer to this question was certain. There must be a higher existence. However, this was a different world. Although internal energy cultivation and Xian Qi cultivation seemed to be the same, the results might not be the same. Hence, one could not come to a conclusion too early. Perhaps this world was different, and it was possible that Zhizun Xian had reached the peak. Of course, with Jun Xie's current level of understanding towards Xian Qi, he could not come to a conclusion. Furthermore, after Jun Xie had gone through the meridian cleansing and marrow cleansing, his meridians had all been unblocked. He had already reached the level of a Xiantian expert, and in terms of meridians, even Zhizun Xian might not be able to match up to him. However, his actual strength was still far from that level. After all, he had only been in this world for a short month. To be able to go from a useless body to his current strength was already an incredible speed. This was also the wonder of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. If it was any other cultivation technique, it would be difficult to even get started in a month. However, the exquisite Hongjun Pagoda combined with the art of unlocking heaven's fortune could open up all the meridians in one go. This was equivalent to opening up countless bottomless treasure troves for Jun Xie, waiting for Jun Xie to fill them up one by one. With Jun Xie's current strength, if it was a real life or death battle, a normal silver-level Xian Qi would not be able to do anything to him. If it was an assassination, it would naturally be a different story. After all, this was Jun Xie's profession. However, the unblocked meridians had given Jun Xie a very strange ability. If he were to deliberately imitate it, as long as he was given the corresponding Xian Qi cultivation technique, he could imitate the extreme form of this cultivation technique at any time. Of course, it was only the form and would not have the corresponding power. Thinking of this, Jun Xie could not help but smile. It seemed like there was another way to act tough. The next day, Jun Xie once again appeared on the training ground, brimming with health and vigor, causing everyone to be shocked. Even the strong bodies of these guards couldn't take yesterday's training. Even now, many parts of their bodies were still aching. But this young master had actually arrived at the sports field earlier than them. After yesterday's training, almost everyone had a new impression of their third young master. They even admired him. But almost everyone was certain that the third young master might not be able to come tomorrow. Not to mention whether he had the heart to come or not, his small body would definitely not be able to handle it. But today, when they saw Jun Xie's upright posture and his eyes that were as sharp as a sword, everyone felt an illusion within their hearts. Is this still the same debauchee young master who spent his days eating and waiting to die? How did he get up? Jun Wui arrived at the sports field early in the morning. He sat in his wheelchair and looked over. Jun Xie's appearance was within his expectations, but it could also be said to be outside of his expectations. He was very clear about Jun Xie's condition after yesterday's training. It was indeed very serious. With Jun Xie's original physical fitness, he might not be able to handle it. Therefore, even if Jun Xie did not appear today, it was understandable. He originally thought that even if Jun Xie appeared, he would be very tired, or even very embarrassed. Even if he was in good health, he might not be able to complete the training yesterday easily. But he really did not expect that today. It seemed that Jun Xie's condition was much stronger than this group of burly men in front of him. Could it be that the training yesterday was not as heavy as he thought? After another day of high-intensity training, the guards were even more surprised to find that Jun Xie's speed today had actually increased by quite a bit compared to yesterday. Moreover, although his footsteps were still somewhat unsteady, they were no longer swaying. At the very least, he was much more presentable compared to yesterday. That was not the end of the surprise. In the next few days of training, Jun Xie had completely caught up with the guards' progress. In fact, he was even better than them. Such a fact made the group of guards' eyes red. Such a rapid improvement in strength was something they had never seen before. Not to mention seeing, They had never even heard of it. But young master's example was right in front of them. The so-called myth had become a living reality. Young master has such a delicate body, and he can do it. We have rough skin and thick muscles, so why can't we do it? This question once again set off a craze for training. Everyone's thirst for strength caused the training to reach a white-hot level. Almost everyone's eyes were red and their teeth were clenched, training with all their might like wild beasts. What they did not know was that in addition to their training, Jun Xia was also carrying 8 heavy sandbags on his body. In addition, every morning, he would have to undergo a special training session before coming back here to train with everyone else. Moreover, Jun Xia had added a few more aspects to his training: climbing, grabbing rocks, leveling, arm stretching, concealment. Jun Xia had divided the 24 hours of the day carefully, not wasting a single minute. Grandpa Jun found out about this news on the 3rd day. He secretly came to check on Jun Mo Xia during his training. Grandpa Jun was pleased with his grandson's progress, but he was also worried that his grandson would train too frequently. Haste makes waste, and that would not be good. However, after checking on Jun Mo Xia, he did not even show his face and quietly left. However, the housekeeper, old Pang, could clearly feel that Grandpa Jun was very happy, very happy. In fact, when there was no one around, Grandpa Jun would even hum a tune or two in his study room. Then, for the first time in his life, he got drunk. He was a complete mess, but his face was filled with joy. After that, he staggered to the front of his wife's memorial tablet and muttered something. It was unknown what he said, but he actually muttered for the entire night. He came out the next day with a smile on his face, but his eyes were filled with tears. The day before the Golden Autumn Festival, Tianxiang City had already begun to become lively. Everyone was dressed in bright clothes, and everywhere was decorated with lanterns and streamers. Wanderers from far away had returned home. How could the annual reunion festival not be lively? At noon, on the top floor of the Drunken Immortal restaurant, the bodyguards sat together, occupying 2 tables. Another table was set up in the middle of them. Only 2 people sat there, Jun Xia and Tang Yuan. Tang Yuan sat opposite Jun Xia, sighing and frowning. Fatty Tang had suffered a lot these past few days. Grandpa Tang Wanli had squeezed out half of his grandson's fat body. First, he was grounded, he was not allowed to step out of the house. Then, whenever Grandpa Tang remembered that the Xian Dan had been stolen, he would immediately call Tang Yuan over and scold Fatty. Then, he would slap him a few times to vent his anger, and then tell him to get lost. This kind of treatment was more frequent than 3 meals a day. It was as if he would be served whenever he thought of it. Fatty Tang had already lost a lot of face. He had almost lost his future wife. His father-in-law had already given him a torrent of abuse. His fiancée had washed her face with tears and threatened to kill herself. She had insisted on canceling the engagement. It was no wonder that the girl was so close today. Who knew what he would do if he really lost her in the future? His father would slap him every time he saw him. Then, he would look for a stick everywhere. His mother wanted to pull him, but she did not dare to. Her brows were furrowed, and every time they met, the first thing they would ask was, "Eldest brother, when are you going to the 1,000 Gold Hall again? Let us go and admire eldest brother's elegance." Then, they would burst into laughter. The most uncomfortable thing was that Grandpa Tang would scold him several times a day. Moreover, he would kneel on the abacus every time. Why? Nonsense. With Fatty Tang's weight, any other abacus would collapse as soon as he knelt. Did an abacus not cost money? Even an iron abacus had become a little crooked after all this time. Chapter 46. Fortunately, Fatty Tang was thick-skinned, broad-minded and fat, and had an optimistic temperament. Even if he was scolded and beaten to the point of wanting to commit suicide, as long as he went back to his room to sleep, he would immediately forget about it and treat it as a fleeting cloud. If it was a person who liked to get stuck in a dead end, he would probably have been tied to the roof beam and reincarnated several times. Of course, Being optimistic about one's fate, being indifferent to the wind and clouds, and passing clouds were mostly official sayings. The damn fatty had simply torn off one side of his face and pasted it on the other side. One side was two-faced, and the other side was shameless. This time, Fatty finally used the autumn festival as an excuse to sneak out of his house, and the first thing he did was to find Jun Xia to complain. Jun Xia was worried about what the thing in his hand was when Fatty Tang arrived. The two hit it off and went to the Drunken Immortal restaurant. They called for a few side dishes and drank together. Fatty Tang drank a glass of wine, sighed 3 times, and then pointed his radish-like finger at the heavens and the earth to vent his anger. Then he drank another mouthful, and the cycle repeated itself. His words were fierce, his words were vicious, and his hatred was bone-deep. All the guests upstairs couldn't help but raise their eyebrows. Even the guards at the side tilted their heads and acted as if they didn't know each other. Following such a young master is really degrading. Jun Dashao raised his eyebrows. Dashao may be calm, but the people Fatty was scolding also seemed to include him. How could he not raise his eyebrows? I say, Fatty, what did you lose in your house? You are so bitter and hateful that I can't even drink anymore. Jun Xia frowned as he looked at the glass in front of him. He really couldn't drink anymore. Being scolded was one thing, and with Jun Xia's calmness, the discomfort would pass in a moment. But this wine was clearly fragrant, but the taste was bland like water. There was not the slightest hint of alcohol in it, and it was like swill. This really gave Jun Xia a headache. If Jun Xia were to evaluate this wine, he would say that it was like a woman taller than Tang Yuan had poured a bottle of inferior and expired perfume on herself. Drinking this wine, Jun Xia could not help but recall the wine he had drunk in Old Song's little shop on that rainy night. That trash wine that Jun Xia had trampled upon to the point of being worthless. Now that he thought about it, he could not help but be fascinated by it. As the saying goes, comparing oneself to others will lead to death, comparing goods to goods will lead to better goods. Even though the wine was difficult for Jun Xia to swallow and could not be compared to the wine from his past life, he now knew that the person who said that this wine was one of the best wines in the entire capital and that it could only be sold in limited quantities was actually true. Jun Xia's original idea of making his own wine suddenly became clear. It seemed that he had forgotten about the lees after they had fermented. Looking at the days. He should be able to make some wine in a few days, right? Even if it wasn't to make money, it was to make some wine for himself. If I only drink this trash wine, then I won't be able to live. When I brew this wine, I will also sell it in limited quantities. 1 jar costs 10,000 taels of silver. If you don't want to buy it, then so be it. I will drink 1 bottle at a time, and if I really can't drink it, then I will feed it to the pigs. Damn it, it's really unbearable. Jun Xia pinched his nose as he drank a cup of trash, and thought maliciously. With his demonic nature, if his temper flared up, it wasn't impossible for him to really feed the wine to the pigs. Sigh. Tang Yuan wanted to say something, but stopped. His round and plump face, as smooth as a poached egg, actually showed a twisted expression. Third young master. This big brother is really suffering. You say, those bastards, who can't they frame? Why must they frame me? Fuck their 18 generations of ancestors, I won't let them off in this lifetime. And those damn thieves, you say, they stole our family's things, why did Grandpa blame me? I curse those thieves. The more he spoke, the more agitated he became. When it came to sad matters, Tang Yuan stood up agitatedly. One of his thighs ferociously stomped on the chair he was sitting on, and the fat on his body shook majestically. With a malevolent expression, he roared towards the sky. Fortunately, the quality of the Drunken Immortal restaurant's tables and chairs was really passable, and could withstand the heavy pressure of that damned fatty. Jun Xia, on the other hand, was somewhat unable to withstand it. He covered his face with his hands in agony, and really wanted to cover his face and run away. Being together with this fatty was too embarrassing. The entire 3rd floor of the Drunken Immortal restaurant fell into absolute silence in an instant. Everyone turned their heads and looked at the pile of fat trembling in agitation. Panting, Tang Yuan moved his thighs down, and without even wiping them, he sat down heavily on the chair, raising his cup and gulping it down. Third young master, this time, my family has lost something extraordinary. Tang Yuan's face was twisted. Just because of this thing, I've been ravaged for the past 4 to 5 days. The old master has taught me at least a dozen lessons, and the old master has used a big stick to chase me and beat me fiercely. Do you think I can run fast like this? Look at this big brother, I've become so skinny now. Tang Yuan pointed at his own body resentfully, and sat on the chair. His soft belly drooped down, covering his knees. You've indeed lost a lot of weight, Jun Xie said against his will, and then added another sentence. Look at how skinny you've become, there aren't even any wrinkles on your face. Tang Yuan spat. He had originally wanted to ruin Jun Xie's appetite, but he didn't expect that Jun Xie would actually stop asking. Although it was a scandal, Tang Yuan had suffered so much because of this matter, so naturally he had a desire to pour out his heart. Otherwise, why would he shamelessly drag Jun Xie out? That's a Xian Dan. Xian Dan, third young master. Tang Yuan moved closer to Jun Xie's ear, and said in a low voice. And it's a peak 9th level mystical beast Xian Dan. This is a heaven-defying treasure. It's just a Xian Dan, and I thought it was something amazing. A peak 9th level mystical beast Xian Dan. Jun Xie's heart skipped a beat, but he turned his head away in disdain. What's so amazing about that thing? I have one in my hands. Do you think it's an ordinary 5th or 6th level item? You think that thing in your hands can compare to mine? Tang Yuan snorted. Let me tell you, the one that my family lost was a peak 9th level Xian Dan. If this news were to spread, I'm afraid the whole world would be shaken. If an Earth Xian expert were to take a 9th level Xian Dan, he would be able to rush from Earth Xian beginner to Tian Xian peak. If a Tian Xian intermediate expert were to take it, he could even rush to Supreme Shen Xian realm in one go. Supreme Shen Xian, third young master, is a top expert in the whole world. Fatty Tang's short and fat hands made an exaggerated gesture, meaning that this was the whole world. Is it that effective? Jun Xie's heart was thumping, but he looked at him suspiciously. You're bragging so much in front of me. If it's really that effective, wouldn't the Chamber of Commerce be selling it like crazy? Who the fuck is bragging so much that his whole family will die? Tang Yuan felt greatly insulted, and he swore to the heavens. He patted his chest, and his fat face turned red. Selling it like crazy? Do you think there are many of these things in the world? If it wasn't something rare in the world, would my old master be so fucking angry? I'm fucking complaining to the wrong fucking person. Fatty Tang was so excited that the two words fucking hung in his mouth, unable to come out of his mouth. Oh. I really sympathize with your fucking mother. Jun Xie let out a long oh sound, and conveniently copied him. He quickly calculated in his heart. If it really was such a heaven-defying treasure, then he really couldn't return it to the Tang family. If this thing could be used to create a super expert for his own family, wouldn't it be much better than letting it be wasted in the Tang family? Tang Yuan's eyes were red, and he felt that Jun Xie was the only one who was willing to listen to his complaints these past few days. In a split second, his heart was moved again, and he fiercely snorted, and casually flung it away. He was about to say a few words to catch Jun Xie's heart, but at this moment, who? Who the fuck is throwing snorts? Fucking step out for me. See if I don't exterminate your fucking 9 clans. A sharp and extremely angry voice rang out, with incomparable exasperation. Chapter 47. Who? Who the fuck is throwing snot? Come out and fucking show your face. See if I don't exterminate your entire family. A sharp voice filled with extreme anger resounded, with incomparable exasperation. Jun Xie turned his head to look, and saw a young man in a green silk robe standing at the top of the stairs, with a gorgeously dressed woman in his left arm. His face was full of anger at the moment, and his right cheek was stained with a large lump of yellow snot, this was the masterpiece of Tang Yuan's fatty Tang. He was currently wiping it in a flurry. Tang Yuan's back was facing the stairs, and he casually flung his snot away, sticking close to the ground. Normally, snot would never stick to a person's body, let alone their face. Coincidentally, at the moment when Tang Yuan was flung out, the young man was kneading the woman in his arms with both hands while he walked up the stairs in high spirits as if there was no one else around. He had just popped his head out at the top of the stairs. Then, a lump of snot flew over, and if he hadn't turned his face in time, perhaps this lump of snot would have flown straight into his mouth. Jun Xie's eyes widened, and he was tongue-tied for a long time before he laughed out loud. While laughing, he shook his head and waved his hands in admiration. "Fatty Tang, your aim is really good, I admire you." Tang Yuan was dumbfounded, and after a long time, he smiled bitterly. "It's not that my aim is bad, but this guy's luck is too fucking heaven-defying." What he said was also true. Tang Yuan and Jun Xia were well acquainted with most of the famous young thugs in the Tianxiang city. Since this guy's face was filled with arrogance, he was certainly not someone who would be content with his lot. However, he was not acquainted with the both of them, which meant that he must be a nobody amongst the local debauches. And at this moment, this nobody not only had snot splashed on his face, but also provoked Jun Moxie and Tang Yuan, the two big debauches in the capital. His luck was really heaven-defying. As the two of them spoke, the youth immediately turned to look at them. He let go of the girl in his left hand and walked over in an overbearing manner. With a twisted face, he roared at Tang Yuan, "Damn your grandma, you damned fatty. Are you fucking courting death? And you, gigolo, why are you laughing?" Jun Xie's face suddenly became gloomy, and he wanted to persuade Tang Yuan not to kill him. After all, it was Fatty who was in the wrong, but now that he heard this, he firmly sat back down. He deserved to be beaten to death. Tang Yuan wasn't a kind-hearted person. Moreover, he was at the most depressing moment of his life and needed something to vent his anger. He immediately flew into a rage when he heard those words. His plump body was like a volleyball that had been ruthlessly slapped by someone. He jumped up and slapped Tang Yuan's face. His right palm was as thick as a bear's paw, and it instantly made intimate contact with Tang Yuan's left cheek. The young man had never expected that Tang Yuan, who was in the wrong, would attack him without saying a word. This kind of young thug was really rare in the world. His body was weak, so how could he dodge? He took a solid hit and spun around twice, and sat on the ground. He only felt that the sky was full of stars shining in front of him, and his head tilted to one side. He opened his mouth, and with a puff sound, 3 or 4 white teeth spewed out, along with the stench of blood. Tang Yuan's face turned malevolent as he pounced forward. His nearly 400-kilogram body soared to the ground and pinned the guy under his body. His left and right fists landed on the guy's face as he cursed, "Fuck your grandmother. I'm in a bad mood, and you still dare to cry in front of me? I'm giving you face by flinging my snot at you, and you still dare to scold me? If I don't beat you to death today, I'll be sorry for that scolding you, you little bastard." Every word was spoken with a pause, and every word was a punch. There was a sense of rhythm, and suddenly, a high-pitched scream like that of a pig being slaughtered rang out. With a cracking sound, the guy's leg bone was forcibly broken by Tang Yuan's weight. The young man let out an inhuman scream, and his body twitched. His head tilted to one side, and he fainted. It was only at this moment that the girl who came with him came back to her senses. She let out a high-pitched scream that sounded like the Tibetan plateau, and instantly went over an octave higher. "Don't scream!" Tang Yuan roared fiercely, and his eyes were ferocious. The woman immediately stopped in shock. Then, she straightened her neck and screamed out in extreme fear. Then, she scrambled down the stairs. A loud bang was heard, followed by a blood-curdling scream, followed by a rolling sound. It was obvious that the woman was panicking and lost her balance. She directly rolled down the stairs like a rubber ball. "Enough! It's good enough that you vented your anger. If you hit him again, you'll really beat him to death." Jun Xia frowned, and felt that today's trip was really boring. Even if I really beat him to death, so what? Who dares to find trouble with me? Tang Yuan punched him again, and then stood up, panting heavily. Beating people was also a strenuous job, and Tang Dashao was quite tired. His eyes slanted. In the entire capital, there are really not many people that I, Tang Yuan, don't dare to beat to death. This guy seems to have some background. Jun Xia raised his chin towards the outside. The sound of hurried footsteps came from outside, and there were actually quite a number of people rushing over. Tang Yuan curled his lips disapprovingly. He doesn't even know you. What background could he have? He's just a little bastard. Even if he brings his ancestor here, this young master will press him back with one finger. Those two evildoers are on the second floor. Young Master Qin is also here. The woman's panicked voice came from downstairs, and then there were the sounds of weapons being unsheathed, and a few clanking sounds of iron chains, and the sound of footsteps could be heard from the stairs. In a split second, 5 or 6 burly men stood in front of the two people with cold and solemn expressions. They looked at the young man lying on the ground with his face covered in blood, and their faces were full of anger. One of them looked similar to the young man, and had a square face and a curly beard. His eyes were so angry that they seemed to be spitting fire, and he waved his hand. What are you still standing there for? Help the young master up, and take down these two audacious bastards. The 4 burly men agreed, and took a step forward, ready to take action. Standing beside them were a few people wearing the uniform of the constables. Hearing those words, they smiled and said, "Clan leader Qin, do you think you should leave this matter to us?" "We will definitely." "Nonsense. My son has been beaten to such a state, and you want me to leave it to you? I will take these 2 bastards away today. I will not let even one of them go. I want to see, in this northern city's drunken immortal house, which bastard dares to touch my, Qin Hu's, son." The man flew into a rage. The constables had originally wanted to flatter him, but he did not expect to eat a hot fart. Immediately, an awkward expression appeared on his face and he did not say anything. This big brother who was clamoring for revenge was the clan leader of the Northern City clan, Qin Hu, one of the 6 big gangs in Tianxiang City. As for the young man lying on the ground, he was Qin Hu's only son, Qin Xiaobao. He could be considered as a debauchee with some background. "Your son cannot be touched?" Jun Xia looked at him coldly. Seeing his domineering manner, he became angry and set a trap. "Then, can your son touch others? Could it be that commoners like us are allowed to be bullied by your precious son?" Qin Xiaobao could be considered as a debauchee with some background. However, that depended on who he was compared to. Today was his day of disaster. He had bumped into 2 of the most influential debauches in the area. Especially when one of the debauches needed to vent his anger, he was like a rabbit venting its anger at a tiger and a hungry wolf. What a joke of fate! Ha ha ha! I am Qin Hu's son, who dares to touch him? If anyone dares, I will exterminate his entire family and 9 generations. Hearing Jun Xia claim to be a commoner, Qin Hu's heart calmed down. He glared at him fiercely. "Gigolo, you have beaten my son to such a state. Could it be that you want to live? It has been a few days since I requested for recommendation votes. Once again, I implore my brothers to support me. By the way, tomorrow at midnight." Chapter 48. Tang Yuan flew into a rage. He was about to jump up and reveal his identity when Jun Xia extended his hand to stop him. There was no need for the 2 of them to personally deal with this matter. For the 2 of them, Lord Dashao, to personally deal with it was a disgrace. Originally, Tang Yuan was in the wrong in this matter. If not for Qin Xiaobao's harsh words, it would have been fine. However, after hearing Qin Hu's words, Jun Xia's murderous intent was ignited. When Jun Xia does things, he does not differentiate between good and evil. If he wants to, he does as he pleases. Based on Qin Hu's words alone, Jun Xia had already decided that he would not let Northern City clan off. With such a father and such a son, Who knows how many evil deeds they have committed? This father is truly a bastard. Jun Xia took it for granted that killing is better than building a 7-storied pagoda, enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. It was a great merit. The leader of the Tang family's bodyguards stood up. The 3 men behind him followed suit. The 4 men's bodies glowed with a silver light. The 4 silver Xian experts stepped forward with gloomy faces. Their eyes were as sharp as knives. Who does Qin Hu think he is? Qin Hu was surprised. He suddenly felt a powerful pressure pressing down on him. His mind raced and he forcefully gathered his Xian qi. His entire body flashed with a golden light and he put away his previous arrogant attitude. He said in a cautious manner, "I am Qin Hu, the clan leader of Northern City Clan. May I ask who you are?" Gold-leveled Xian qi. As a clan leader, Qin Hu was not someone to be trifled with. Unfortunately, this gold-leveled expert's heart was beating like a drum. After witnessing the strength of the other party, this clan leader's ability to change his face became even more amazing. A silver-leveled Xian qi was naturally nothing in his eyes. However, the problem was that these 2 men had 4 silver-leveled experts as bodyguards. What did this mean? What were the origins of these 2 men? Could it be that this time, his son had provoked someone he should not have provoked? Although a gold-level master was qualified to become a gang leader, and Qin Hu was considered a top figure in the capital city, there were still many people he could not afford to offend. He recalled how his son had offended a very handsome young master some time ago. He took liberties with the young master's beautiful maid in the middle of the street. Back then, the young master did not do anything to him. However, that very night, all the high-ranking members of the Northern City clan were captured and brought into a very secretive place. His own cultivation base was at the peak of the gold level. Yet, his son, Qin Xiaobao, had his dantian destroyed and would never be able to cultivate Xian qi ever again. Only after 3 days and 3 nights did he manage to come out alive. However, the price of preserving his life was to become a chess piece in the hands of that person. Although he still didn't know who that young master was, Qin Hu knew that it was surely one of the young masters of the few great clans with overwhelming power and influence in the city. Even gold-leveled Xian practitioners and ordinary Earth Xian experts could not afford to offend the nobles of the current dynasty. However, the one in front of him seemed to be even more powerful than that mysterious young master. As for this pretty boy in front of him, he was even more handsome than that mysterious young master. Could it be that he had fallen for the same trick twice? Northern City Clan leader Qin Hu. Never heard of him. Where did this trash come from? To think that he would dare to be so impudent. As for who I am. Originally, you would not have the qualifications to know. However, your son dared to offend our Tang family's eldest young master. That was an unforgivable crime. Our young master is magnanimous and kind. He only gave you a light punishment and did not bother with your son anymore. As his father, instead of being grateful and properly disciplining your son, you brought people here to denounce him. You even colluded with the authorities to capture the 2 young masters. Qin Hu, how dare you? The leader of the guard stared at Qin Hu and slowly spoke out in a low voice. Such eloquence! Jun Xia applauded in his heart. The moment the leader of the guards opened his mouth, he placed all the blame on Qin Xiaobao's head. His words left Qin Hu with no room to refute. That was not all. The most brilliant part was that he had infinitely beautified the name of the Tang family's eldest young master, Fatty Tang. Just based on this level of flattery, he was definitely a talent, a great talent. Tang family's eldest young master. Hearing those words, Qin Hu was nearly frightened to death. Coincidentally, the one he was most afraid of at present was the Tang family. Not for anything else, but because he had a guilty conscience. The mysterious young master was indeed terrifying. However, the ignorant are fearless. Although Qin Hu was afraid of the mysterious young master, he did not know the young master's background or how strong he was. This was the Tang family. That was a well-known and established family within the capital. Destroying his small northern city clan would be child's play for them. Not to mention the fact that he had followed the mysterious young master's instructions to steal the Tang family's Xian Dan. Presently, he was in a state of panic, fearing that the Tang family would suddenly come knocking on his door. If that happened, it would be the end of his northern city clan. Who could have guessed that his son would provoke the eldest young master of the Tang family at this critical juncture? This was really a self-inflicted disaster. There was no way to live. At that moment, Qin Hu felt as though he was about to faint. Against such enemies, he could not wait to avoid them. Yet, his son had chosen to face them head-on. Even if he wanted to seek death, he would not do so. Others would turn back after hitting the wall. But why was his son not turning back after hitting the wall? Looking at his son lying on the ground covered in blood after being lightly punished by the eldest young master of the Tang family, Qin Hu felt both anxious and distressed. Although his northern city clan's influence was not small, when compared to the Tang family, a powerful and influential family, the disparity was like that of an ant or a tiger. His only son was truly too much of a failure. Last time, he had caused trouble and had his Xian Qi crippled, losing half his life. Yet, he still did not learn from his mistakes. It seems that this time, he would most likely lose his remaining half of his life. Not only was Qin Hu panicking, even the 4 constables were completely dumbfounded. They had originally thought that by helping young Master Qin vent his anger, they would be able to make a small fortune. How could they have imagined that they would end up facing the eldest young Master Tang? This was no longer a matter of money, it was a matter of life and death. As for you scum of the public sector, stay here for the time being. Let your superiors come and pick you up. I would like to ask them, is this how the Ministry of Justice's arrest office does things? Relying on the power of the underworld to bully the weak and good people, aiding the tiger? Committing all sorts of crimes. Tang Yuan gloomily looked at the constables. Their words were actually watertight and filled with awe-inspiring righteousness. However, those words should not have come out from Tang Yuan's mouth. It should have been someone else saying those words to Tang Yuan. It was no wonder that when Jun Xia heard those words, he could not help but laugh out loud. Fatty Tang actually dared to call himself a weak and good citizen? The 4 constables' faces turned pale and they looked at each other. They were on the verge of collapsing. If Fatty were to shout out one more time, they would probably be scared to death. Tang Yuan's father-in-law, Sun Chenghe, was the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice and was in charge of this area. The superior of these constables was Sun Chenghe's direct subordinate. If he were to come and see these 4 men helping Northern City Clan to deal with their superior's son-in-law, wouldn't he be infuriated? If that happened, these 4 fellows would truly be finished. These 4 fellows were truly unlucky. Naturally, they had heard of the name of the eldest young Master Tang. However, their qualifications were too low. They had only heard of the name of the eldest young Master Tang and had never seen him in person. Today, they had bumped into an iron plate. So, it is the eldest young Master Tang. This little one has been disrespectful. Qin Hu quickly changed his expression. With a face full of smiles, he cupped his hands and bowed deeply. My son had eyes but failed to see and had offended young Master Tang. I have to trouble eldest young Master Tang to discipline him on behalf of this little one. This little one thanks you very much. I hope that young master will be magnanimous and give us a lighter sentence. Tang Yuan raised his nose to the sky and gave a snort, ignoring him. He then turned to the 4 guards and said, "For this kid to act so atrociously against me for no reason, there must be an inside story. I now suspect that this Northern City Clan is related to the robbery of my Tang family. Bring this kid back and interrogate him properly." The 4 guards replied in unison, but their faces showed signs of distress. They thought to themselves, the cause of this matter is you. Not only did you snot all over that fellow's face, you also beat him half to death. That fellow's father had already lowered his voice to you. Now, you still want to falsely accuse him of stealing? That is simply too much. Tang Yuan's words were just words of indignation. He was merely venting his anger. He was just randomly trying to accuse Qin Xiaobao. Qin Xiaobao had provoked him in such a manner. Not to mention, it happened at the worst moment in Tang Yuan's life. How could he just let it go? However, Tang Yuan could never have imagined that his words of falsely accusing Qin Xiaobao would turn out to be like a blind cat bumping into a dead mouse. As luck would have it, a stick would hit the main character. Recommended book, I Am a Demon Immortal. If you are interested in reading xianxia novels, you can check it out. Chapter 49. Hearing Tang Yuan's words, Qin Hu felt as though his soul had left his body and cold sweat broke out all over his body. Oh my God! This is truly a case of walking in the middle of the night and encountering a ghost. Anyone would understand that this kid was just falsely accusing them. Yet, what he said was the truth. Son of a bitch, this is the worst. If his son were to be brought back and say something that he should not say, the Tang family has quite a number of smart people. Jun Xia smiled evilly as he observed the situation from the side. Seeing Qin Hu's face suddenly turn pale and his eyes evasive, Jun Xia could not help but feel puzzled. At best, Fatty Tang's words were just a way to get more face and benefits. Was there a need for Qin Hu to be so panicked? No matter what, he was still a clan leader. Although Northern City Clan was the weakest amongst the 6 great clans, as the clan leader, Qin Hu should not be such a good-for-nothing, right? Truth be told, for Qin Hu, if he could use this matter to make friends with the Tang family, it would be a great blessing. However, looking at his conduct, he seemed to have a guilty conscience. Why? Stop! Guilty conscience? When he thought of this, Jun Xia's gaze when he looked at Qin Hu immediately became profound, and he immediately started calculating in his heart. My son was rude, Da Xiao is right to teach him a lesson. I wonder if you can allow me to bring my son back to recuperate from his injuries before sending him to your mansion for Da Xiao to teach him a lesson. Naturally, since my son has frightened eldest young master and your esteemed friend, this Qin will definitely compensate you. I will definitely satisfy eldest young master. Qin Hu was after all a clan leader. Although he had become a frightened bird after the incident last time, his many years of experience had not been easy for him. Thus, he was able to quickly recover. With a smile on his face, he proposed a compromise. Tang Yuan gave a harumph and said, I would like to see how your Northern City Clan will compensate him. By saying that, he had already indicated that he would not pursue the matter any further. Fatty Tang was also a bachelor. Now that he had gained face, it would depend on the benefits. Qin Hu was also a veteran, so he could naturally tell. He was overjoyed and thanked Da Xiao, saying, Thank you very much for showing mercy and magnanimity, Da Xiao. In the future, Qin will definitely pay a visit to thank Da Xiao for his great kindness. Tang Yuan nodded and looked at Jun Xia. I'm fine, but your son just scolded Jun Sun Xiao. As long as third young master doesn't blame him, you can leave. Jun Sun Xiao. Qin Hu suddenly thought of Jun Mo Xia's name. Tang Yuan had displayed such an attitude towards the third young master Jun. Apart from the infamous Jun Mo Xia, there didn't seem to be a second one in the entire capital. Not only did his son offend Tang Da Xiao, but he also scolded Jun Sun Xiao, who was even more difficult to deal with. At that moment, Qin Hu suddenly felt the urge to strangle his son to death. If this kid was not his only bloodline, Jun Xia looked at Qin Hu, a flash of light flashed through his eyes before disappearing. He had already made up his mind. Qin Hu and his son Qin Xiaobao, one was arrogant and domineering while the other was arrogant and protective. Jun Xia could imagine just how much sin this father and son duo had committed. Let's not talk about anything else. Today, if not for him and Tang Yuan, an ordinary person would not have survived. Qin Hu, Qin Xiaobao, scum like them, must be killed. Northern City Clan, must be eliminated. Jun Xia's killing intent was stirred. However, he still had some misgivings. The main reason was that he could sense that there was someone spying on him within this restaurant, observing his every move. Lazily leaning against the back of the chair, He habitually crossed his legs and pointed his finger at Qin Hu's forehead. Qin Hu, originally, this young master wanted to teach you a lesson for those words you said earlier. However, seeing that your attitude is still respectful, I will let this matter go. I heard that your northern city clan has opened up quite a number of casinos in the northern part of the city. I heard that northern city clan is rolling in mountains of gold and silver every day. Hehe, you have truly struck it rich. Glaring at him, he sneered twice and said, Qin Hu, this young master will be waiting to see your attitude. If you do not satisfy me, this young master will guarantee that not a single person from your northern city clan will live to see the sun rise the day after tomorrow. After saying that, he suddenly straightened his body and bent down. Moving closer to Qin Hu's ear, he let out a strange laugh. However, if you satisfy me, there will be benefits for you. Why don't you just say the more, the better? What's the point of beating around the bush like that? Qin Hu cursed in his heart, but there was nothing he could do about the situation. As the leader of a gang, he was pointed at his nose and scolded by a teenage child in front of him, with spittle sprayed all over his face. It was truly humiliating. However, Qin Hu dared not show any signs of dissatisfaction. That was because this person said that he wanted to destroy Northern City Clan. It did not seem to be a difficult task. With a smile on his face, Qin Hu swore that he would satisfy Jun Sunxiao. After saying all sorts of good things, Jun Xia finally waved his hand and he picked up his son and left. Hey! What a disappointment! Tang Yuan spat at Qin Hu's back. Third young master, tomorrow night at the Luo Yu Lake's Golden Scholar Banquet, are you coming? I heard that there will be a lot of new stuff. According to tradition, the Tianxiang Kingdom would hold a Golden Scholar Banquet on the evening of the Autumn Festival in the center of the Moon Lake in Tianxiang City. The emperor would appoint several ministers to invite the top 10 scholars of the Wenxing Heavenly Literature Institute. In fact, these 10 scholars were about to graduate and enter the imperial court. The emperor would take this opportunity to evaluate these scholars, and then arrange corresponding positions for them. Therefore, this Golden Scholar Banquet was equivalent to a platform for scholars to leap into the Dragon's Gate. There were only 10 places for the thousands of scholars. Naturally, there were too many monks and not enough gruel for the thousands of scholars. This naturally caused the competition between the scholars of the Wenxing Institute to become even more intense. At the same time, such an occasion would naturally attract the attention of many people. Each of the great families would also send their representatives to see if they could pull these scholars to their side. Moreover, most of these scholars were single men. Moreover, they were all golden bachelors with boundless prospects. Therefore, some of the noble ladies would also want to choose their ideal husbands from among them. Naturally, many women would also come to take a look. With so many noble young ladies gathered in one place, a debauchee like Tang Yuan and Jun Moxie would naturally not let go of this opportunity to hunt for beauties. In order to compete with the scholars for the attention of the beauties, they would also compete with each other. However, each time, the debauchee would lose miserably. Nevertheless, they would never get tired of it every year. At this moment, Tang Yuan had asked this question. His fat was trembling with excitement. It was obvious that he was determined to go. Of course, it was hard to say whether or not he was determined to win. In any case, it wasn't very optimistic. Golden Scholar Banquet? Tang Daxiao, look at the two of us. Do we look like scholars? Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. Vegetable seeds, more like it. Jun Daxiao had a few words in his heart that he was too embarrassed to say. This young master has delicate features. Naturally, I look like a scholar. But your elder brother, it's not appropriate to say that you look like a vegetable seed. It's more like a fat seed. Nonsense. What scholar? Isn't it just a group of greedy sour fellows? Just like that Zhao Qingsong from last year. He made me lose face at the Golden Scholar Banquet. He made me lose face in front of Miss Li. He acted as if he was a nobody. This young master immediately ordered for him to be brought into the Tang family. Then, I promised him a high position and a generous salary. Didn't that guy still eagerly come over? Do you know what official position he's holding now? Tang Yuan was immensely proud of himself. Chapter 50. What official? Jun Xia was very interested in this interesting matter. After searching through his memories, he found out that Zhao Qingsong's family background was ordinary. Although he was indeed very talented, he was extremely snobbish. He was simply a piece of trash who looked aloof on the surface but was actually servile and servile. The last time he had gone against Tang Yuan, he had also hoped to obtain the favor of a young lady from Grand Preceptor Li's clan. However, in the end, none of the young ladies from the great clans had taken a fancy to him. Instead, it was Tang Yuan who had magnanimously accepted this person as his subordinate. This was not something that Tang Yuan would do. I arranged for him to work in the Ministry of Revenue. Then, I asked my uncle to find fault with him and transfer him away. Then, I transferred him away a few more times. His only job now is to scrub my back when I bathe. He also washes my underwear and socks every day. He also washes the clothes of my concubines. He doesn't have any other job. Tang Yuan smiled ferociously. If he was stubborn and virtuous to the end, I wouldn't be able to do anything to him. I would be embarrassed to continue tormenting him. But this fellow is a spineless coward, yet he still wants to pretend to be virtuous and virtuous. What do you mean by a distinguished scholar? Bah! Didn't he want to pull the skirt of Grand Preceptor Li's family? Then, I will make him wash the skirt every day. Tang Yuan's uncle was the Minister of Revenue. Naturally, it was easy for him to trip up a newcomer. Pfft! Jun Xia sprayed a mouthful of tea on Tang Yuan's face and coughed. Your uncle really listens to you. Tang Dashao, aren't you insulting him too much? No matter what, that person is a gifted scholar. He is also a graduate of the Wenxing Institute. He has some ability. Isn't this a little too disgraceful? Disgraceful? Third young master, I don't dare to agree with you. What kind of plaything are those people? They are just a bunch of bookworms. Even if they learned from books the ability to rule the world and bring peace to the country, so what? They are only armchair strategists. They don't know how to use it. They can only keep it in their stomachs. Being knowledgeable did not equate to being capable, nor did it equate to having a good character. What kind of talent was a mere mouth? Moreover, it didn't represent anything at all. The Wenxing Heavenly Institute had such a great reputation. But how many high-ranking and influential figures of Tianxiang Kingdom had ever come out from the Wenxing Heavenly Book Institute? Pooh! Tang Yuan laughed and patted Jun Xia's shoulder. Third young master, neither of us are good people. Stop! What do you mean by, neither of us is a good person? Jun Xia had initially agreed with her and secretly applauded her. He deeply agreed with this point of view. It was just like how the so-called top students who scored full marks in an exam-oriented education were nothing compared to the well-trained elites of society once they abandoned their words. Just like a baby who had just been weaned off his mother's milk. It seemed that no matter which plane it was, this was the same. It's just that I didn't expect Tang Yuan to have such insight. It's really unexpected. Just as he was having a great time listening to Zhang Xian's words, he didn't expect the brat to suddenly change the topic. The difference between heaven and earth, north and south, was simply too shocking. Huh. I'm saying that neither of us are good people. Tang Yuan laughed and said, but third young master, no matter how bad we are, in this big capital city, even if we harm people every day, how many people can we harm? Thousands of people are already amazing. But for a spineless person like Zhao Qingsong with a belly full of evil tricks, if he were to really be released as an official, he would harm countless people. Furthermore, after he is done, he can go to other places to cause more trouble. As long as the imperial court doesn't behead him, he can continue to cause trouble. But by the time he is beheaded, who knows how many people he has harmed? Comparing us to him, who is more of a plaything? At this point, Tang Yuan suddenly became somewhat indignant. that's why I want to humiliate these shameless things to death. What gifted scholars, go fuck yourself. As long as they call themselves gifted scholars in front of me, I will beat them up. Every single one of them will die. As long as they fall into my hands, those hypocrites will never be able to get out of this predicament. Jun Xia laughed heartily, not bad, not bad. Fatty Tang, this is the first time I've heard you speak so happily. Well said. Just based on these words, I propose a toast to you. This toast was a sincere toast from Jun Xia. Fatty's words had deeply touched Jun Xia's heart. Looking at Jun Xia's 2 lives, there were at most 2 or 3 people who could receive a toast from Jun Xia. For Fatty to be able to drink such a toast, it was really a great fortune. To receive a toast from Jun Xia, in this world, Tang Yuan was the first person. After this toast, it meant that Jun Xia had already recognized Tang Yuan as a person. Although this person was a silk pants, he was a true villain with a true temperament. Jun Xia had always done things as he pleased. If he found someone pleasing to the eye, even if that person was condemned by 1,000 people, Jun Xia would still share a toast with him. If he found someone displeasing to the eye, the whole world would call him a saint. Even Jun Xia would not spare him a glance. At this moment, Fatty Tang was completely unaware of the value of this toast. Naturally, he would not have thought that because of Jun Xia's toast, he was able to escape several calamities. In several life and death situations, he was saved by Jun Xia. But this was a story for another time. Tang Yuan raised his cup and drained it in one gulp. His small eyes were round. This young master knows himself well. I don't look likable. I like to gamble and fight. I bully people to relieve my boredom. When I see a pretty girl, I will flirt a few times to relieve my boredom. I have the heart and the guts to do so. I am a bad person, but I am bad in the open. As the saying goes, everyone loves beauty. Everyone is willing to take a second look at a pretty girl. Why the fuck wouldn't I let them see my pretty face? If a fucking good girl saw me looking at her like that, she would definitely hide. If I met such a person, I would naturally not go up and look for trouble. After being looked at by me, she would still stand there waiting for me to take liberties with her. How could she be a good person? But as the rumors spread, I actually became a heinous criminal. As for those hypocrites, they would immediately lower their heads when they see a pretty girl. They would put on a dignified and refined demeanor. But when the girl turned around, they would immediately stare at the girl's butt and drool. They would secretly use their nefarious methods. Bah! This is a gifted scholar. A gifted scholar on a bird. This kind of gifted scholar, I can't wait to kill them all one by one. After a round of discussion, Fatty Tang was in a depressed mood. He raised his cup again and again, his mouth gushing unceasingly. His hands also did not stop drinking. Even though the alcohol was light, it was a pity that when the alcohol entered his stomach, the change in quantity led to a change in quality. In the end, he was drunk. His eyes became misty and his huge head swayed back and forth. He could no longer support himself and fell into the fish soup bowl in front of him with a bang. He was scalded to the point that he cried out, but he also sobered up because of the scalding. Jun Xia looked at Tang Yuan, whose face was covered in fish soup and cut a sorry figure. Suddenly, he had a thought, since I want to get rid of this pair of heartless father and son, why don't I just let the Tang family handle this matter? With old Master Tang's gloominess from losing his precious treasure, he would rather kill 1,000 wrongly than let one wrongly go. And, moreover, my current strength is not good enough. The people that I trained are temporarily not of use. If I let my grandfather take action, it would cause too much of a commotion. That's right. I'll do it this way. As long as I do this, I'll succeed. Pfft. Killing a bunch of trash is not a big deal. The reason why I did not let the Jun family take action was because Jun Xia had another concern. The Xian Dan had already become a big maelstrom. Although Qin Hu's expression could not be certain that it was because of the Xian Dan's panic, but if it was related to the Xian Dan, then the Jun family's action of exterminating the Northern City clan would be the same as revealing that they were hiding something. They would become the target of public criticism. On the other hand, the Tang family was the exact opposite. They did not have any such concerns. Fatty Tang, since you have eaten and drunk your fill, let us find a quiet place to talk to your brother. I think the Red Joy House is a very quiet place. What do you think? Jun Xia was obviously a lecherous devil, but he still wanted to put on a sanctimonious act. Red Joy House. It really is a quiet and good place, wahahaha. Tang Yuan's eyes lit up and his drunkenness disappeared by half. His face was filled with an unbearable itch. Ha ha ha, third young master, you really are my bosom friend. Let's go, let's hurry up. It just so happens that I have been in a bad mood for the past few days. I need to find a quiet place. After saying that, he stood up impatiently, causing his fat belly to drop down onto his thighs. Jun Xia looked at Tang Yuan with a straight face, his heart feeling somewhat puzzled. It was hard to imagine what would happen to this fellow once he arrived at the Red Joy House. Could it be that he would have to lift his belly up with both hands? Otherwise, it would be quite difficult to handle. What a pain in the ass. Chapter 51. The two of them swaggered down the stairs. It was not that Jun Xia did not want to explain himself. Rather, Jun Xia's senses had been telling him that someone was spying on him in the restaurant. That aura made Jun Xia feel very uncomfortable. That was why he suggested going to Red Joy House, the quiet place. After Jun Xia and Tang Yuan had gone down the stairs, a voice came out from the private room of the restaurant. Brotherly, they have left. What do you think? A gentle voice replied in a calm tone. Tang Yuan is someone with some experience. However, that is all there is to it. He is too much of a debauchee. Even if this kind of person has bad intentions, he will only jump out in the open to go against us. So, we do not need to consider him. However, that Jun Moxie, his recent behavior seems to be different from what the rumors say. There was a thick sense of doubt in his voice. Oh? Brotherly means to say, there is something wrong with that Jun-san kid? The first person asked in a puzzled tone. But this fellow is still as frivolous and greedy as ever. Didn't you see him extorting Qin-Hu just now? This fellow's appetite is too big. He actually wants Qin-Hu to hand over the gambling house of Northern City clan to him. Huh, what a fool's dream. Is he not afraid of choking to death? There are some things that you do not know. These few days, Jun Moxie has been acting strangely. That is not all. There is indeed something strange about this matter. Let Li Yan pay attention to this. Let him tell Qin-Hu to go to Jun Moxie's place tomorrow afternoon. Do not forget a single word that Jun Moxie said. After that, immediately sort out the information and give it to me. Do not miss out on anything. I need to think about it carefully. The second person was deep in thought as he tapped his fingers on the table. Thinking back to Jun Xia's behavior earlier, he finally shook his head. From his words to his actions, he had the face of a typical debauchee. Why did I feel that something was wrong? Am I being too sensitive? No, it is better to be safe than sorry. For the next few days, try to find a way to meet up with Jun Moxie. That Brotherly slowly said, there's news that this kid has been training at home as if he doesn't care about his life, and he's very good at talking. I keep feeling that something's not right. I want to see if it's true. Me? Meet Jun Moxie? That person immediately spoke in a reluctant tone, as if asking him to see Jun Moxie was a very embarrassing thing, and he was ashamed to sit in the same room as that foppish young master. You're still so arrogant and conceited. This arrogance will kill you. That Brotherly raised his head. He had delicate features. It was Li Yuran. He said this indifferently, but the person on the other side suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. Yes, I'll arrange it when we get back. Yes, I'll be watching from the sidelines. Let's see what Jun Moxie is up to, Li Yuran said faintly. By the way, brotherly, I've received news that second brother might make a move in the next few days. He can't wait any longer. But I don't know if his target is third brother or Raimu. They're very cautious, and there's no more news. Oh? Li Yuren's gentle voice snorted. He slowly lowered his voice and said, second brother is really stupid. At this time, whoever makes a move first will be unlucky. We can just wait and see for now. Don't worry about it. It's better to wait and see. But, that girl Raimu is your favorite. The person who spoke first seemed to be afraid to continue. It's okay. She's just a woman. If we can borrow that girl Raimu to let big brother, second brother, and third brother fight until blood flows like a river, that's what I'm looking for. Li Yuren's gentle voice was calm and natural, but it revealed indifference and indifference. He slowly said, as for women, they're not worth mentioning. The private room became quiet. On the way, in the carriage, Jun Xia sat far away from Tang Yuan. He was trying his best to restrain himself, enduring the greasy smell of Fatty Tang's body. Even with the endurance of the king of assassins, he couldn't resist it anymore. Jun Xia opened the curtains of the carriage and took a breath. He said, Fatty Tang, from what you said, you're suffering at home, aren't you? Tang Yuan, who was originally in high spirits, suddenly became depressed. He waved his hand and said weakly, third young master, let's not talk about this if we're brothers. Every time I mention this, I want to hang myself. Tell me, why am I so unlucky? Others don't encounter this kind of thing, but I keep coming. Third young master, I'm really, fuck. Then, do you want to get rid of the situation? Jun Xia laughed evilly and tempted him. Of course, why wouldn't I want to? Whoever doesn't want to is a bastard. However, this matter is not something that can be easily solved. Tang Yuan scratched his head, his face revealing an old-fashioned look. What do you mean by easy or difficult? I am just asking if you want to get rid of this sea of suffering. Jun Xia narrowed his eyes, looking like he was trying to lure a fish into the bait. He stared at Fatty Tang with interest. I really want to. Tang Yuan became excited. Third young master, could it be that you have a way? A way? Although I don't have many, I do have 2 or 3 ingenious plans. However, any one of my ingenious plans can help you get rid of this predicament. Do you want to know? Jun Xia laughed and crossed his legs. I want to. Third young master, my blood brother. Brother Jun, Uncle Jun, ancestor. Hurry up and tell me, I have had enough. Tang Yuan suddenly grasped onto a life-saving straw and became excited. He gasped for breath and tears nearly filled his eyes. Did you see the arrogance of the Northern City clan today? You must be pissed off by them today, right? Jun Xia casually hinted. But I am unhappy. Damn it, this father and son pair is a pair of trash, so annoying. If not for the fact that there are so many bad things happening at home, I would really want to kill him. Tomorrow, when he comes to give me money, I will not even meet him. Tang Yuan shook his head. Third young master, hurry up and tell me the plan. Why are you bringing up these 2 pieces of trash? Isn't this the plan? Tang Yuan, not many people know about the burglary in your house, right? Jun Xia smiled. There must be quite a number of people who know about this. The burglary is not a big deal. However, no one knows exactly what was lost. If news of a level 9 Xian Dan being burgled in one's own house were to spread out, wouldn't our Tang family become the laughingstock? To the outside world, we are just chasing after escaped slaves and searching for enemies, Tang Yuan mumbled. He was getting more and more confused as to what medicine Jun Xia was trying to pull. But, according to my speculation, Qin who knows about this. Jun Xia swayed his crossed legs. Just now, did you notice? When you said that the Tang family was burgled, Qin whose expression was one of panic. It would appear that he was sweating profusely. Truth be told, Qin whose expression had only changed slightly. There was no reaction on his face. As for the sweating, that was all but non-existent. However, Fatty Tang was not a meticulous person. He could not hear it, let alone remember it. You mean to say Qin Hu is related to this matter? Tang Yuan suddenly sat up straight. His small eyes were perfectly round as he stared at Jun Mo Xia. The matter that the young Master Jun was talking about was of great importance. Therefore, he couldn't help but feel suspicious. In fact, the young Master Tang would have believed Jun Mo Xia if he had said that there was such a thing. Fatty, how could you take things so hard? Regardless of whether he is related to this matter or not, as long as you feel that he is related to this matter, it will be fine. You just need to go back and tell your grandfather that Qin Hu's Northern City clan might be related to this matter. That way, regardless of the result of the investigation, whether Northern City clan is related to this matter or not, the pressure on you will be greatly reduced, no? Jun Xia gave an evil smile. Besides, we are not wrongly accusing him. The panic on Qin Hu's face back then cannot be faked. If there is nothing to feel guilty about, why would he panic? However, if my grandfather investigates, what if Qin Hu is not the one who did it? Wouldn't that be self-defeating? Tang Yuan hesitated. Chapter 52. Even if that's the case, didn't you do your best for this matter? Seeing that you're willing to admit your mistakes and even help with the investigation, I believe that the old man won't be so harsh on you anymore, right? Besides, as long as you insist on it, Qin Hu may be a major suspect. With the old man's current urgency, he will definitely make a move to get to the bottom of this matter. As long as the old man makes a move, it will be like a thunderbolt. At that time, it won't matter whether Qin Hu did it or not. Moreover, the Tang family will also gain the reputation of getting rid of evil for the people. So, why not? Continue to tempt. You're right, my grandfather really values that thing. As long as he knows a little bit of information, I'm afraid that he will immediately make a move. Tang Yuan pondered, however, this matter still requires a surefire follow-up plan. Otherwise, my days will still be very difficult. Good. Let's do it this way. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this plan was wonderful. Tang Yuan couldn't wait any longer. Third young master, how about I ask them to send you to Red Joy Brothel to have some peace and quiet? Otherwise, if the old man finds out that I went to a brothel after hearing such news, I will definitely be in a worse state. Indeed, there's no time to lose. You go about your business, and your brother is busy. How can I still have the mood to go to a brothel? I'll just have some fun. Jun Xia smiled. Fatty Tang, congratulations, you're about to regain your freedom. Tang Yuan grinned like a Maitreya Buddha. Same to you, brother. It's all thanks to your guidance. After declining Tang Yuan's good intentions of escorting him back to his mansion, Jun Xia immediately got off the carriage and the two went their separate ways. Watching Fatty Tang's carriage roll away, Jun Xia's mouth curled into a smile. If the Tang family really makes a move, what should I do next? The Xian Dan is in my hands, but I don't know how to use it. How can I solve this problem? Should I consider spreading the news of this matter to attract a few top-notch experts to the Tianxiang city? The world was so big, and there were so many talented people. There would definitely be someone who knew about it, right? However, it was better to hide this matter from Grandpa and Third Uncle. If they knew, with Grandpa's integrity and Third Uncle's integrity, what if they proposed to send them back to the Tang family? Or, if he spilled the beans or something, he would be in big trouble. It was better to give the Xian Dan to the Third Uncle or Grandpa without anyone knowing, and then explain it to them. Well, what was done could not be undone. In that case, everyone would be able to make a fortune silently, right? With Jun Xia's current miraculous art of unlocking heaven's fortune, as well as a cultivation method that was completely different from this world's profound qi, Jun Xia did not believe that this Xian Dan, which every profound practitioner in the world yearned for even in their dreams, would be of any use to him. And this was indeed the case. However, although the Xian Dan in this world was useless to Jun Xia's cultivation of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, there was still something that could assist him in his cultivation. It was just that this rookie did not know, there was also the Golden Scholar feast tomorrow. Should he go or not? After pondering for an unknown period of time, he finally made up his mind. Regaining his composure, he touched the flying dagger in his bosom and sighed. Ever since the last time, Jun Xie knew that the flying dagger he had made with his primitive method was not very effective against the high-level Xian practitioners of this world. The former had only killed a silver Xian expert, but the flying dagger had actually been damaged. What if it was a gold Xian or Yu Xian level expert? Thinking of this, Jun Xie inexplicably broke out in a cold sweat. The only thing that could be imagined was that this kind of iron flying dagger would not be very effective against those super experts. At the very least, it would not be able to achieve the desired effect of a single fatal blow. Therefore, before Jun Xie's strength had truly become formidable, it was better for him to first forge a few self-defense weapons for himself. At the very least, with his current strength, the hidden weapon would be able to break through Yu Xian's Xian Qi protection. This was already the lowest standard in Jun Xie's mind. But to reach this standard, ordinary iron would definitely not be enough. Jun Xie kept his head lowered as he walked towards the Divine Arms List. In the entire Tianxiang city, the Divine Arms List was probably the only place where he could find the best materials to forge flying daggers. In Jun Xie's mind, the most ideal material was black iron, or even cold iron. If there was none, then he would have to use steel essence. After parting ways with Jun Xie, Tang Yuan and Tang Dashao excitedly returned home and impatiently requested to see Old Master Tang. For the past few days, Old Master Tang had been extremely vexed. His precious Xian core had been stolen, and there had been no news of it at all. This made the already fiery old man even angrier, and he was thinking about Tang Yuan. If it weren't for that scoundrel's hedonistic prodigal's son going out to gamble and fool around, how could so many things have happened? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He was about to summon Tang Yuan to give him a beating. Just as he was about to call for someone, a servant suddenly came in to report that Master Dashao was requesting an audience. He was momentarily stunned. Not to mention at this critical juncture, it was rare to see this fellow on a normal day. Right now, he probably can't wait to avoid me, but he actually has the guts to come to me. Could it be that I've scolded him so much that he's gone mad? He said, "Tell him to come in immediately." After thinking for a while, he said, "Bring the iron abacus here." As soon as Tang Yuan entered the room, he saw the huge iron abacus lying horizontally in front of him. Immediately, his face turned bitter. What filthy matter is it now? Old Master Tang was furious. He asked, at the same time pointing his chin at the iron abacus, indicating for Tang Yuan to kneel on it before replying. He understood his grandson's character very well. If it wasn't something that he couldn't solve, he would never dare to disturb him. Tang Yuan's face turned bitter, and he knelt on the ground in grievance. His belly hit the ground with a loud and clear sound. What's the matter? Old Master Tang looked at his grandson's belly, which was hanging on the ground, and became even angrier. Can't you lose some weight? Do you really think that you're a pig? Tang Yuan had come back in high spirits to hand in his contribution, but he didn't expect to be treated like this. He immediately drooped his head, looked at his belly, and mumbled, "I don't want to be so fat. After being scolded by you guys for the past few days, I can't even eat. I only drink water, but I still put on weight. Hurry up and tell me about your matter." Old Master Tang was both angry and happy. Don't talk about such useless things. Did you get into trouble again? Grandfather, Tang Yuan was excited. Thinking about how he was going to follow Jun Moxie's instructions and escape from this painful life, he couldn't help but stand up. Ignoring Old Master Tang's angry expression, he said, "Grandfather, I think I found a clue to the Xian Dan that our family lost." Oh? Old Master Tang was just about to get angry and have this kid kneel down again when he heard those words. His eyes lit up and he no longer cared. "Hurry up and tell me, what is the clue? Ever since the Xian Dan was stolen, your grandson has been worried day and night, blaming myself endlessly. These past few days, I have racked my brains, poured my heart and soul into it, pondered over it, and worked hard. Tang Yuan's expression was one of sincerity, as though he had turned over a new leaf. Stop! Stop, stop, stop! Old Master Tang felt a headache coming on. Do you want to kneel on that thing before you are willing to talk seriously? Hurry up! He pointed at the iron abacus. Old Master Tang was immediately shocked. Today, I went out to search for clues, only to encounter the Northern City Clan's clan leader, Qin Hu, his son, Qin Xiaobao, who was using his power to bully the innocent people. Your grandson could not help but feel indignant at the injustice. According to your teachings, your grandson's chivalrous heart cannot bear to see such filthy things. Thus, with my heart soaring to the clouds, my feet dancing with the east wind, I acted righteously, helping the weak. Seeing injustice on the road, I pulled out my sword to help, chivalrous and righteous, for the country and the people. Not long after that Qin Hu actually dared to bring his men over to find trouble. He truly did not know the difference between life and death. When he discovered that it was me, he actually panicked to the extreme. Fatty Tang's ability to blow his own trumpet is truly extraordinary. The words that come out of his mouth come out one after another. Nonsense. Who does that Qin Hu think he is? After provoking our Tang family, how could he not panic? That is the clue you were talking about? Old Master Tang snorted. What kind of bullshit clue is that? To think that I would actually put so much hope in the words of this bastard grandson, I am really. Listening to this series of boasting, Old Master Tang felt a headache coming on and his face filled with black lines. Grandfather, if Qin Hu had been nervous right from the start, it would naturally be reasonable. However, in the beginning, he did not show any signs of panic. However, when I mentioned the matter of our family being robbed, Qin Hu's face changed greatly, as though he had encountered a ghost. Tang Yuan had the appearance of a wise man as he carefully analyzed the situation. The outside world only knows that our Tang family has had their gold, silver, and jewels stolen. Due to the issue of face, they chased after the thieves. However, this matter has nothing to do with Qin Hu. Why would he be so shocked? Your grandson feels that there is something fishy about this. Who knows, it might have been done by this bastard.